part of the AEM Entertainment Management, and my pathway is personal care. In personal care, Ms. Lark, our teacher there, she brings in different partners that we have in order for us to be able to learn different things from the career in the industry. As well, students are able to be a part of the leadership at the school, and me personally, from being a senior class president, I've had the chance to be over the homecoming court and many different big events in our school. At Procom, we also have our senior capstone, which is a requirement through Metro that we have to do. And through capstone, we learn different literature strategies and as well to perfect in our career. This helps a lot, and our seniors say, challenge accepted. And also, we work really hard to be our best and work hard in our careers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jacoby Scantling. I am the Senior Ambassador Lead and also the Executive President here at Procom of the student body. I'm in the Academy of Entertainment Management in the marketing pathway. And in the marketing pathway, what we do is we promote basically what we do with our community. So like we just started our own official Instagram page to where we promote our PC Give Lifted, which is our environmental type of event that we have. Plays like our Christmas play that's upcoming right now, and we also doing prom too. So we believe that it takes our students' hard work and dedication to be the best that we are today. And that's what we think every time we walk in those buildings, the doors in the building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Starting off, I just want to thank you guys for, allowing us to express ourselves and also talk about our academy experience. My name is Matthias Che. I am in the Academy of Energy and Power. My pathway is digital electronics. I am in the Air Force Junior ROTC program. I am a student ambassador, of course. I'm in the AVID program, and also I am a Belmont Scholar.
Nice.
Right.
Hello, my name is Lauren Jernigan. I'm in the Sports Medicine and Wellness Academy, and my pathway is Diagnostic Medicine. I am currently a St. Thomas Scholar. I am salutatorian of my class, and I'm also a Belmont Scholar, too. And I just wanted to talk about how great a school Maplewood is, because when I came in my freshman year, I really didn't know what I wanted to do or what I wanted to go to college for. So Maplewood, I kind of just picked an academy, but everything that kind of Maplewood does and gives you so many opportunities. I went on a job shadow at St. Thomas Hospital, and I job shadowed a physical therapist, and it was a very, very boring job shadow, but it definitely showed me, that that wasn't what I wanted to do. And
Yeah, that's worthwhile. It was a worthwhile experience.
So it was definitely boring, but it showed me that that wasn't what I wanted to do, and it was definitely one of the things I thought I wanted to do. And without the job shadow and all the opportunities that Maplewood gave me, I would have went to college for physical therapy and went into a career and been unhappy for the rest of my life. So it's just, with the teachers and all the opportunities and the job shadows and the partnerships with St. Thomas and everything else really helped me and is giving me so many opportunities to learn about what I'm passionate about and pursue those dreams. So thank you.
First off, I just want to say, before I went to Maplewood High School, I was just going to school, just getting good grades, because I think that's what I just thought school was about. And finally, I just said, let's go to Maplewood High School, right? And I found out all the opportunities you got there through the the academies, and I was interested in technology, computer stuff like that. So I was like, why not Energy and Power Academy? At the end of my freshman year. And it has transformed me as a person, is matured me in ways I can't even, explain. It showed me and given me so many opportunities for my future. For instance, last summer, I was able to get an internship with our partner, Stanzo Electricity. There, what I was doing was I would job shadow the different professionals, just seeing the business aspect, and also going out on job sites, seeing like a bunch of type of stuff just going on I'd never imagined, and I was just lost for a while. I didn't know what I really wanted to do. Coming out of my middle school, beginning of high school, I just wanted to play video games and stuff, I guess. But yeah, just the academy experience has been great for me. My internship with Dana Morrow, that's his name. Great man. I see him as my mentor, and I would have never met him if I'd never been in academy at Maplewood High School, and I just think that's amazing. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
One more thing. I would like to thank my principal, Dr. Mason, great principal. She just started recently, and I just think she's an amazing woman. And
I know, sometimes I wonder, should we put them at the end of the meeting? You know, just, that was wonderful. Thank you all so much for taking time to be with us today. We also have an art display over here to my right, to your left, from Glencliff High School, which is in Mr. Pinkston's district. It's going to share some information with us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight's artwork is a selection of work created by students from Glencliff High School. Go Colts! They are students of Samantha Perry, who's an amazing art teacher. This work was recently showcased at the MNPS Hispanic Heritage Celebration earlier this month, and as always, great work going on at the Cliff. Thank you.
And we had a performance today, which many of you were able to hear. And I know Mr. Pinkston wants to talk about this one too, but he can't because there was a little Pinkston in the choir. Mrs. Pupo Walker, I believe this is yours, Glendale Elementary.
Yeah, so we were delighted to see our students from Glendale tonight. So Rita Black, the music teacher at Glendale Spanish Immersion School, has taught music for 24 years in Oklahoma and Tennessee, K-8, combined private and public schools, teaching elementary music the last 9 years for Metro schools. She serves as the Performing Arts Content Council lead teacher, is currently serving on Mayor Briley's teacher cabinet, and is a 3-time CMA Music Teacher of Excellence Award recipient. Mrs. Black was also one of 10 music educators in the United States to receive the Yale Distinguished Music Educator Award in 2017, continues to mentor university student teachers, has presented in local and national conferences, and served as a teaching fellow for SCORE, an education advocacy group created by Bill Frist. Rita feels lucky to have the opportunity to guide students' learning and impact their lives through music, and she continues to advocate for equity in arts programming for all students. Our Glendale 4th grade students were pleased to present to you this evening a song written by a former Glendale parent and songwriter, Mrs. Kathy Ashworth. The song lyrics feature both Spanish and English. It is entitled Me Gusta Glendale, meaning I love you, Glendale. The song paints a story of the importance of this place to our community of learners. We know our school is more than a building. It is the people that make the place, and we thank you for the opportunity to share what our school means to us. We hope you enjoyed their presentation.
Thank you. It was great.
And
Go ahead, Mr. Pinkston.
point of personal privilege, so I can show this to my daughter on YouTube. Sloan Pinkston was in the front row of that performance. Class of Hillsborough 2027. Gosh, I feel old. So thank you.
She did a great job.
Thank you, Glendale. Love you, Sloan.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for those that chaperoned and got our young performers here to be with us today. Now it is time for public participation, favorite point of every board meeting. We have people who have signed up to participate. Your names are on the screens. Please line up accordingly. You have 3 minutes to make your presentation. I hope you practiced, because at the end of 3 minutes, you will hear this sound. Please do not ask us to ask you twice to relinquish the microphone to the next presenter. Hello, Teresa.
Good evening, Dr. Gentry, members of the board, and Dr. Joseph. I am Teresa Wagner, District 6 constituent, proud Apollo Astro educator and vice president of MNEA. I would like to call your attention. I asked something to be put in your place. It is a breakdown of a normal day for a 3rd grade teacher at one of our enhanced option elementary schools. He asked me to share this with you. It is far too extensive for me to go into. Stress. People who don't manage stress well can have headaches, stomach pain, sleeping problems, illness, and depression. These things can lead to high levels of absenteeism and lowered productivity in the classroom for teachers. I asked members of MNEA to simply tell me some of the things that cause them negative stress at work, and the list is daunting. I will not get through this list in one reading, but I will get as far as I can in the time that I have. Salaries. Teachers in enhanced option schools being told that those programs are being discontinued, and with those changes, their incomes are being significantly reduced to the tune of thousands of dollars. Feeling disrespected, ignored, dismissed, and trivialized. Class sizes. Lack of textbooks and appropriate curriculum supplies. New attendance responsibilities. New teacher attendance policy. Grades and gradebook. They, and this is a quote, embarrassed to work in a system that protects people in power who do grossly inappropriate things. Disruption of instruction for minor infractions. Inaccurate record keeping by HR affecting transfers and salaries. Instructional micromanaging. New FMLA policy as it affects a teacher with a chronically ill child. General staff cuts causing more work for those who remain. Increased costs for parents, pre-K and meals, while taking a net pay cut. Additional responsibilities such as ILPs, support areas such as cafeterias, office staff, and ed assistants being understaffed, fewer support such as reading recovery, nurses, and interventionists, additional paperwork, parking at some schools requiring teachers to arrive 45 to 60 minutes early to find a space, late buses, sometimes as much as 30 to 45 minutes late, outsourced workers' compensation causing some to worry that they will not be taken care of properly should they be injured on the job, custodial staff spread too thin to do their jobs properly and already running out of supplies, inequitable treatment of staff by some principals, the lack of paid family leave, the lack of administrative support in handling behavior issues, including when a child is being self-injurious, the lack of substitute teachers, expectations that teachers will purchase supplies with their own money, poor communication from the district and within schools, mismanagement of resources that schools do have, poor physical conditions of buildings, examples such as mold, crumbling walls, and unhealthy odors. Fine arts teachers concerned about losing their growth portfolio as part of the evaluation. My time is up this month, but I'll be back next month with the rest of this list. Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members and Dr. Gentry. I'm a school psychologist, and like my colleagues who spoke recently, I want to talk to you about the ratio of school psychologists to students within metro schools. Last year, I was extremely lucky. I served 2 small elementary schools, which included about 700 students, right within the national recommendation of 1 psychologist of 500 to 700 students. One of my schools, Rosebank, jumped at my desire to provide more comprehensive services. Last year, I worked closely with our excellent school social worker, and we expanded the way we were looking at student data to be in line with MTSS practices. We revamped how we were talking about data in our grade level meetings to be more whole child focused, including closely reviewing SEL and behavioral data alongside academic information. It was refreshing to be a part of a school team that was so open to looking at student information and truly asking if our practices were making a difference. And when they weren't, we pulled together across departments to adjust. We could be more proactive in the way we were addressing student needs instead of just putting out fires and tamping down crises that result from ignoring or simply punishing student misbehavior. This work was extremely rewarding. Last year, Rosebank was recognized statewide as a model school of demonstration for our PBIS program, partially due to our ability to be responsive to a broad range of student data. Additionally, recently I was notified that I am being recognized by the Tennessee Association of School Psychologists for their Best Practices Award. I'm humbled and honored to receive such recognition, but the notification of that award was bittersweet. In July, my lead called me to let me know that I would have 3 schools this year. He was gentle with this news, but on that phone call, he said that this year would not be a year for comprehensive services for me due to my increasing caseload. In September, I agreed to partner with another psychologist to cover a 4th school because we continue to have over 10% of positions within our department vacant. The first day I went to that 4th school, I received an email from a kindergarten teacher at Rosebank who's been working collaboratively with me to provide behavior supports to a student who's been having challenges. The previous day had been a hard day for the student, and she ended her email with a plea for help. After reading her email, I had to stop and consider not only when I would be back at Rosebank, but if I would have any time to sit down with her to provide support with all the other duties that had piled up. That thought was distressing. Board members, I hold a license that would allow me to work in the private sector, likely for better hours and better compensation, but I love working in the schools. There's no place like a happy elementary school, and Rosebank is a school that I truly love. However, I don't know how many more nights I can lose sleep over feeling like I have no ability to provide effective supports to excellent teachers begging for help. I've seen what it's like to be effective, and I'm begging you to take any steps that you can to help reduce the ratio for school psychologists within MNPS so that we can all provide better, more proactive services. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Clayton. I'm a school psychologist. This is my 18th year in the district, all of which have been in in the field, all of which have been in Metro. The psychology department currently has at least 6 open positions, more than I can remember in my 17 years in the district. I looked at our staff, and there are 12 of us that have been here 17 years or more. That's 20%. More than half of our staff has less than 10 years experience. Education is already a complex field, and school psychologists carry additional knowledge about behavior, development, learning, cognitive processing, and data-based decision-making, in addition to federal and state guidelines and local district policy. And any educator's skills take time to develop. The learning curve is incredibly steep for someone just coming into the profession or coming from out of state. Those of us with more experience are happy to step in and mentor new staff members. It's a privilege, just as I'm sure veteran teachers feel the same way. When we continually lose psychologists, as when we lose teachers, the burden continually falls on us with more experience to train new staff in the variety of skills they need, in district procedures, which are numerous and time-consuming, and it falls on us to provide leadership and guidance. It falls on us to continue to build capacity within the department and in our schools so new staff will be able to provide the services and support to our students and support one another in the future. All of this while trying to keep up with our own work demands and trying to keep up with a complex and ever-evolving profession. All of this effort is absolutely worth it for the level of service that can be provided in the future, but our work with students is now. Adding to the load for all of us is that new responsibilities are often added, and few if any are ever removed. To have the opportunity to be here as we begin to see our roles expand beyond test and place is extremely exciting. At the same time, however, psychologists, teachers, and other educational professionals only have the same amount of time every day to address all of the additional expectations we're given. The end result is that no matter the amount of support and encouragement one is provided, there's still only so much time in which to get things done. This leads to discouragement, exhaustion, and burnout, and resignations. One way to address this situation is to make the mentoring and training all the more effective, is to reduce the ratio of school psychologists to students within Metro Nashville Public Schools so students and staff and the community can benefit from the immense expertise that school psychologists can bring to a school building without risking resignations due to exhaustion, burnout, and feelings of ineffectiveness. We have to make Metro Nashville a place where teachers, psychologists, and other educational professionals want to come and want to stay. Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm Michael Utley. Good to see so many familiar faces here. A lot of you probably know my wife, Tracy Utley. She's been very active. We live over in East Nashville. We've been over there for years, active in the schools. My wife, Tracy, and I are raising 4 sons. We're active in the public schools. Could not be happier with everything that's going on in the city and in the neighborhood and in the schools. Just absolutely thrilled.
And special shout out to Charlie, his son, who was also one of our interns, because you can't forget Charlie.
Right. Yeah. So I sort of I wanted to kind of open with that because just generally speaking, I'm absolutely thrilled with you guys and with the city and everything we're doing. I'm here today because we messed up on something. And I need to tell you what happened. Charlie got in after a week at school, and I said, hey, how's everything going? You know, tell me about your classes. and they don't have a pre-calc teacher. We're the #2 certified STEM education program in the country, and I feel like he's being pushed into college with something really critical missing. I dug in, kind of made sure I understood what was going on. They were bouncing around between online programs, and now where they are is an online program with no teacher at Stratford High School for pre-calc. This is a problem. We need to fix it. We ought to try to fix it this year. But instead of digging into that, I want to share a couple of other ideas. Charlie's an amazing kid. He gets up at 5:30 every morning, or about 5 o'clock every morning, to start his either his cycling down at Shelby Park, or on his work days to go into the turnip truck where he makes chickens and sandwiches. The reason he's doing this is to earn money to go on a trip to England. He's earning all of his own money to do this. He's one of the most hardworking kids I know. All of my boys are like this. It's amazing. Something that he is really good at doing is advocating for himself. If he wants to do something and there's no real way to do it, he'll figure out a way. There's a concept in video games of, I don't play video games, but I'm surrounded by that stuff, having 4 boys, called leveling up. And Nashville's in a situation right now. We're leveling up. There's a lot of energy in the city, right? Everybody feels it? The city's leveling up right now. We need the funding situation to catch up. When I dug in with Dr. Steele, he said, yeah, we lost some funding and we lost a teacher at the last minute to one of the charter schools. Listen, if Nashville has any problem right now at all that would keep Charlie from taking pre-calc at Stratford, it should not be money. That should be the least of our problems. But we don't always have to look to the taxpayer to provide that money. I want to put a challenge on the table. I'll provide my written comments later to you all and to the mayor and to the Damon and everybody else, the Board of Education. But I want us to put a challenge on the table through the Pencil organization to try to level up and double corporate giving by 2019. I'll follow up with a written statement later. But guys, we got to fix this pre-calc thing and we need to level up. Money should never be the problem. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Eric Huth. I'm president of the Metropolitan Nashville Education Association, and I've been giving 3-minute speeches here longer than any of you have been on the board. So I've got the 3 minutes down, Dr. Gentry. I want to echo some of the things that have been said before. Clearly, the issue that's impacting psychologists is a very serious issue. The pay for psychologists, the ratio, the enormous burdens of paperwork and everything else you're hearing, the understaffing of schools is impacting them very badly. Just like the lack of teachers in MNPS is impacting our students. But there's a common thread in those concerns and the one you just heard from Mr. Utley about the lack of a teacher for his son, and that is that Nashville is a chronically underfunded school system. This community has for too long spent too much time giving its money to developers and creating monuments downtown like the Music City Center, which has a multi-million-dollar surplus that was in part created by taking money away from our schools. So I would encourage you to do everything you can and encourage those listening to us on television to tell their council members to be sure to fund MNPS so that we have textbooks, so that we have teachers, so that we have the technology that we need, so that our buildings can be repaired, so that we have money to replace the pipes that have lead in them that might be poisoning our children, so that we can make other absolutely critical repairs in our schools. But on a brighter note, I would like to publicly thank Shannon Black, who works in HR, for her work helping fine arts teachers and kindergarten teachers with the portfolio issue that has so negatively impacted them. I don't know how much you all are aware of it, but she has been working with us and with teachers to try to help process their grievances so that they can get the fairest result to an absolutely disastrous evaluation system that the state of Tennessee is perpetrating upon our teachers and ultimately negatively impacting our students. So thank you very much for Shannon's work, and I would like to also thank you for your continued support for finding a solution to the evaluation problems that are plaguing this state and our district. Thank you.
Hello. I guess it's good I'm not here to talk to Dr. Joseph. I want to thank everybody for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight. I'll be addressing the board this evening, and I hope you guys are engaged. Dr. Joseph is in his third year as MNPS Director of Schools, and a quick look at his time here shows the following: a drop in TN Ready scores at almost every high school, math scores down nearly 3% from last year, English scores down more than 6%, priority schools have risen from 9 to 21, transportation costs have doubled, 500 students left the district in 2017, leading to decreased funding, sexual harassment and misconduct claims have been made against Metro employees, and there was a failure to report them. Confirmation by MNPS that indeed there was sexual harassment taking place. There were claims of election interference, a cover-up regarding lead testing of school water, and as of this morning, I see that kids at McGavick are eating moldy bread and outdated milk. Anyone else in the leadership position with that many negative marks under their tenure would no longer have a job, and yet Dr. Joseph does. And not only that, as Anna Shepard puts it, he has full reign to do whatever he needs to do in order to make this district successful. Show me the success. Dr. Joseph has no regard for his budget or board policy. He doles out business contracts like candy to his buddies and many on the board. And with a majority of this board, he has zero accountability. You all are allowing one person to run this district into the ground. We have an entire district of teachers who haven't gotten raises, whose insurance costs have increased, essentially cutting their pay, and who are increasingly having to fund their classroom needs out of their pockets. We have students who receive backpacks of food on Fridays so that they can eat over the weekend. They receive donated clothes from SSA closets because they can't afford to purchase their own. And then you have Sean Joseph, for whatever reason, refuses to let go of something as ridiculously privileged as a chauffeur. I don't get it. And yes, I know he does work while being chauffeured. We all have important work to do, but what a message to send to those who are watching him and you all so very closely. I am speaking to you all as his collective boss. These examples of poor judgment and non-performance and covering up, these are happening on your watch. It is a reflection of you and your willingness to sacrifice this district's children and their education, and for the life of me, I cannot figure out why you would be willing to do that. It's time for you all to make a change and take control of this situation. We can do so much better.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Denise Bentley. I'm a product of Metro Nashville Public Schools and the proud daughter of an elementary school teacher who served this district for more than 30 years. And I know what my mother taught. My mother taught that children, all children, have value. My concern is, what are we teaching today in MNPS? What are we teaching when we are suspending, expelling, and arresting children who are 3 through 9 years old? What are we teaching those children who are being suspended, expelled, and arrested? And what are we teaching those children who are watching? Now, what are they teaching in Denver? In Denver, they've eliminated out-of-school suspensions, expulsions for preschool through third grades, except in the most serious circumstances. What are they teaching in St. Louis public schools, in Maplewood, Richmond Heights, Missouri schools? What are they teaching in California, Connecticut, Oregon, New Jersey, Seattle, Minneapolis, Texas, and many other communities where they've already stopped suspending, expelling, and arresting elementary school students? What we are asking is not new or untested. Communities who have preceded us in making changes have raised their graduation rates and lowered their dropout rates. The last time Passage addressed the board, we reminded you that each day these current policies remain in place, children are harmed. We've already had 18 kindergarten students suspended for the school year. There have already been 160 suspensions since the beginning of the school year, 76% of which were African American children, while making up only 45% of the enrollment. We don't want to teach that adults in whose tender care we place our dearest treasures, our children, we don't want to teach that they don't know how to show tenderness, compassion, and patience in the face of disagreeable behaviors. After all, isn't education more than just reading, writing, and arithmetic? Don't let fear of a new approach silence that spirit that called you to be an educator. Enact a policy that ends suspensions, expulsions, and arrests for pre-K through elementary school students for all except 500 level infractions. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Derica Griggs, and I'm the current assistant principal at Napier Elementary, and I would like to thank you for the opportunity to be able to share with you tonight. Tonight, I would like to share with you about Napier's alternatives to suspensions. For the past 3 years, Napier, we've had a decline in student suspensions. For the 2015-16 school year, we had a total of 122 suspensions. For the 16-17 school year, we had a total of 23 suspensions, and we ended last year with 14 suspensions. And so we credit this decline to our heavy focus on SEL supports. During the summer before the 2017 school year, our principal, Dr. Lawless, she challenged our leadership team with creating a behavior management plan that required 0 suspensions. And so us as a leadership team, after meeting, we decided to create a behavior support plan. And so as a part of this behavior support plan, we wanted to teach students and give them the tools that they needed to be able to manage their emotions and self-regulate. And so we've been able to see reductions in suspensions with this because we've used programs such as The Leader in Me and Move This World. And so at the beginning of the school year, we use the first 8 lessons of The Leader in Me. And with those lessons, we focus on setting that strong classroom culture and foundation, and also just building in those procedures that are needed. Also, within The Leader in Me, we focus on things such as the resolution tree, peace corners, and make those things non-negotiables as well. Through our work with the behavior support plan, we have aided our students and teachers with the tools that they need in order to be successful in this process. These programs, they provide, again, students with self-regulation strategies that enable them to make better decisions. Additionally, the staff, they receive training as a whole on those Tier 1 supports, such as The Leader in Me. Also, as a school as a whole, we use point sheets, and those points, they're able to be cashed in a point-operated student store. As non-negotiables, again, all staff members, they're required to have peace corners in their room. They include student reflection sheets, resolution trees. Teachers, they're also required to have morning and afternoon circles that encompass time for students to share their emotional and goal setting. Whitney Russell is our Dean of Culture, and so she's here to share with you additional information.
Let her restart your time.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Our Tier 1 supports reach a majority of our students. However, for those that are still exhibiting disruptive behaviors, we have Tier 2 supports that assist with self-regulation. 1, buddy classrooms. When students are assigned to go to a buddy classroom, they can go, they can reflect, cool down, come right back in and be ready for instruction. We have Move This World. Move This World is an SEL program that the students do in the morning. This program teaches strategies for students to help regulate. And we also have the Smart Center. The Smart Center is a cool down time for students, and they're typically assigned that time in order to reset after some type of an incident. We also know that students cannot learn if they are hungry, tired, or angry. We have implemented Tier 2 counseling supports as well. We have a school social worker that meets with families to create plans based upon family barriers. We have school counselors that meet with students anytime. We also have our Vanderbilt counselor that meets with students as well. We have 80 partners that support us in these efforts. Our partners have gender-based mentoring groups that serve our highest needs students. Our partners have also made it possible to have 3 different aftercare programs that all students have access to. I would say about 87% of our students are involved in some type of aftercare program. And before they go to their aftercare program, we feed them supper through the supper program. And these enrichment opportunities that these students have as well, such as band, majorettes, cheerleading, acting, and chess. Parental engagement is also one of our core values. Every month, we have a family supper that focuses on social and emotional support as well. Last month, we focused on conscious discipline. Students must go through all of these supports before suspension can even be considered. Once a student has exhausted the above-mentioned opportunities and still exhibits behaviors that are deemed unsafe to other students, then we must look at other forms of discipline. As a leadership team, we meet to make sure that we are all in alignment with suspension. We look at that student, we look at that student's profile, and we look to see what supports, what have we done to make sure that this student can be successful. So, as a team, we also realize the importance of social and emotional learning and that it extends outside of the school building. In order to support these efforts, we have a family resource center for parents. We give out weekly food bags. We have adult tutoring. Basically, any support that a family needs, we can provide that or contact them with someone who can. Students come to school to learn. However, we know that social and emotional needs must be met as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Linda Bowling, and I'm a part of the core team, a restorative practice team at Hillsborough High School. And I'm here to talk about the effects of school suspensions on elementary school kids. I have a lot of experience with school discipline, both with core and from personal experience. My first suspension I ever had was in first grade, when a boy in class didn't invite me to his birthday party. I was upset and I got into a fight because I felt left out. Administration brought me into a desk, into the office. After that, I felt like I had a reputation as a bad kid. I felt as though administration was ready for me to be in trouble. From then on, I faced in-school and out-of-school suspensions every year up until middle school. And I got in trouble a lot because I had a short temper and I felt like people always tested me. Instead of talking to me, administration would have me sign a paper, send me home, and then I would return to school as if nothing ever happened. Eventually, in 7th grade, I was expelled, and this happened because I had too many suspensions and no academic growth. And I had no academic growth because I was never in school due to suspensions. I would get in trouble, but it eventually stopped. It stopped because my new school's administration would talk with me, and they would try to figure out what the issue was, understand why I was upset, and they talked with me towards finding a solution. Although I was doing better, I still had personal issues, and in 8th grade, I suffered from depression. I made a comment about suicide, and when a teacher heard me, they alerted administration. And my school helped find me a therapist. It was the first time I felt my school cared about me, and they made me feel like I mattered. Since then, I've had very less problems with suspensions and fighting. At Hillsborough, I joined CORE, which means Culture of Restorative Environment. And I joined because I felt the students were misunderstood and I can help other students in similar situations as myself. At CORE, we hold circles and we work with teachers and students around issues of school discipline, and we value both sides and help to come to compromise. My experience with CORE has given me a place in school, and it made me feel accepted. That feeling of acceptance was missing when I was younger. When the first time when I got suspended, I felt so isolated. First from not being invited to the party, but also from being separated from class. And then it worsened every time I got suspended. After being suspended so many times, it made me feel disposable. I felt as though no one at school cared for me. What restorative practice does, it creates inclusiveness by including students in the conversation and breaks down barriers between them and administrators. If administrators had worked with me when I was younger instead of suspending me, maybe I wouldn't have fought so much, I wouldn't have been so angry, and I would have felt seen and heard and felt like I belonged. By taking away suspensions from elementary school students, we would show kids that they are not disposable and that they do matter. Instead, if we create a more supportive and inclusive school, we can prevent what happened to me and help others that feel like they don't belong and eventually help them succeed in school.
Oh, my time started. Okay, my name is Amy Kate. I'm here as part of the Passage Group asking you to end elementary suspensions, arrests, and expulsions. This is my third year as Dean of Students at Hillsborough, and a major part of my role is using restorative practices to create a more positive school culture. I'm here today to speak about my experiences at the school level related to changing the culture from a punitive one to a restorative one. Many will try and tell you that this work is not new in MNPS or that it's impossible. I'm here to speak to both of those camps. I'm also here to ask you to dream with me of what it would be like to have high school students who were kept in class in elementary school instead of being suspended, who were showered with resources as opposed to being isolated or labeled, and who were taught important coping skills proactively from a young age. Restorative practices is certainly a new way of doing business for most in MNPS. I cannot emphasize enough the work it takes to try and create a restorative culture. It takes staff training, many one-on-one conversations with each member of our community, and patience, a lot of patience. Suspending kids is easy work. It's cut and dry, black and white, if you will. But restorative practices is full of gray area. It's asking questions and training yourself to listen. It's fostering growth despite adult discomfort with a new way of approaching discipline. It's modeling vulnerability with your community so that everyone understands how we impact each other. It's addressing bias that all of us bring to school. You've seen the data. The connection between bias, race, and disproportionate school discipline is undeniable. It's teaching emotional vocabulary because so many people in a school community can only talk about two feelings, happy and angry. So it's new work, and it's brave work, and it takes time, so much time to get at the root causes of behavior. Some say approaching school discipline and school culture restoratively is impossible. It's just not true. It's possible to end elementary suspensions because it's already been done elsewhere. Others have shared that information. Some say it's impossible because taking this behavioral response makes schools unsafe. Arresting and suspending students doesn't make schools safer. It magnifies trauma. What's unsafe is sending the message that non-compliant students who are under the age of 9 are disposable. Punishment isn't synonymous with accountability, and it's unsafe to criminalize normal childhood development and behaviors that make sense when you consider the effects of chronic stress and trauma. If we continue suspending young children, we're becoming complicit in the cycle of traumatizing those who are already vulnerable. There are positive outcomes of the work we're asking you to begin with this policy. Approaching school culture restoratively creates more trust between students, teachers, and families, trust that students with trauma desperately need. It also creates a sense of safety that leads to more positive outcomes. Approaching students restoratively also teaches students not only how to use their voices, but reinforces that their voices are valued. One of my heroes, Brian Stevenson, says in his book, Just Mercy, that to move forward as a society, we must find healing where it does not live. Healing does not live in elementary suspensions, expulsions, and arrests. Please join me in accepting the hard and brave work of disrupting the school-to-prison pipeline and starting the work of restorative practices at the elementary level by supporting this policy change.
Good evening. If you noticed on your agenda, it says that I'm here to speak to you about cooperation between Dr. Joseph and the board. What I see right now is a one-way street. I have a great deal of respect for this board, but I am afraid Dr. Joseph doesn't share my respect. So tonight, I want to ask you a question. Do you truly believe that Dr. Joseph can make good on his promises to lead us in a better direction in the remaining time of his contract? We're starting from an all-new low right now, 21 failing schools. I don't believe he can do it. You did your due diligence. You vetted him, and we thought we had found the leader that we needed, but he has not proven to possess the skills that he told us he had. This is about the children. I've had 3 children come through the Metro Nashville schools. I've got one that's a senior at McGavock High School, and I have an 8-year-old daughter who's a 2nd grader. She's adopted. She was born struggling to live through the drugs that her birth mother had put into her system. She has significant developmental delays in reading and math because of it. And as we were evaluating her for an IEP, and for the services that she needed, Reading Recovery was ripped out from under our feet as a resource. My child had an IEP without an identifiable resource. Why was it taken like that? And I wish Dr. Joseph was here, because I won't say anything behind his back that I wouldn't say to his face. But my child's school should have known what was going to replace reading recovery before it was gone. And if it was taken away as an act of retaliation against Mrs. Spearing, then shame, shame, shame. Because this is about kids. This isn't about who gets the last word or who can provide knee-jerk reactions of racism or politics. This is Nashville. We're an inclusive city. I wanted Dr. Joseph to be everything that he promised he would be, but he hasn't delivered, folks. And you have to decide right now. You're coming up on a time where you have to decide, are you throwing good money after bad? It is time to terminate his employment and find a new director who will lead us in the right direction, away from 21 failing schools, away from understaffed teachers who are paying for school expenses out of their own pockets, not enough school psychologists. I'm a mom. My kids deserve better.
Good evening, Board. My name is Katherine Brown. I'm the mother of 2 MNPS students and possibly your biggest cheerleader. But I'm here today as a parent and supporter on behalf of an army of others because we're very tired. We are tired of defending public schools, trying to lift up as teachers and students, donating our time, money, and hearts to a system that continues to fail its students. I have spent hours tutoring, mentoring, planning, raising money, and being your cheerleader. So many others, just like me, have continued to be loyal to increase enrollment in our neighborhood schools, to convince our friends and neighbors that MNPS is the way to go. But I and countless others who are sitting behind me are ready for a big change. Board members, it's time that you do what is right for our families and our students. We've had enough of your passivity as week after week we are subjected to scandal after scandal. We are angry because this administration tried to circumvent the filters that kept our kids from being poisoned by lead levels in the water that were as much as 7,000% higher than the EPA levels of concern, yet you tried to lie and hide it. We are angry because this administration has sexual harassment charges that will ultimately cost MNPS millions in legal judgments and downplayed the seriousness of the charges, and then you admitted in legal proceedings that the charges were true, but you tried to hide it. We are angry because a $7.5 million shortfall that was known in the fall of last year but only announced in the spring, you put teachers in an impossible position. We are angry because our director threatened one and retaliated against another board member by eliminating a significant program like Reading Recovery at literally the last minute. We're angry because when you were presented with a budget that was first incomplete, then filled with errors at nearly every stage, you did nothing. We are angry because we continue to lose teacher after teacher from our system because they can no longer accept the toxic culture of the central office. We're angry because our priority schools have gone from 9 to 21 over the last 2 years. We're angry because contracts continue to be split and hidden to avoid board review and approval, continuing to line the pockets of his friends and keep it under the radar. We are angry because when the media asks the hard questions, not only do we do nothing, but they're confronted in the parking lots outside this building. We're angry because we have families leaving the district in droves because they don't see any changes happening. We are angry because misconduct was not reported to the state. Nashville is becoming far less attractive to teachers and families with children because the cost of living is becoming less and less reachable, and school systems in surrounding counties are not racked with these scandals. What can we point to keep these families here? Why shouldn't they leave?
Moving on to the board chair's report, we have a few things to share, actually. First, I'd like to just share some very sad news about the passing of Dr. Julie Williams. Many of you may remember her as an educator in the district. So just want to share a little bit of information about her. You could leave quietly, I'd appreciate it. Dr. Julie Williams spent 14 years as a teacher in MNPS with endorsements in English and government. She spent 9 years as an assistant principal, first at East High School, then at Hunters Lane High School, 10 years as a principal at Hunters Lane High School, a year as an assistant superintendent for human resources, and a year as assistant superintendent for high schools. She retired from Metro Nashville Public Schools. That's a cumulative, you add those numbers up, you get 35 years. After her official retirement from MNPS, she served as an exemplary educator for the State Department of Education and an adjunct professor of English and Education at Belmont University. In 2007, she was asked by State Department of Education officials to come out of retirement to lead the efforts to turn around the academic performance at Maplewood High School. She would be extremely proud to hear the reports from the ambassadors that were here today. In 2010, she retired again, becoming a full-time adjunct professor at Belmont University and later the director of school programs at Smithson Craighead Schools. Dr. Williams was the founder and CEO of Rising Phoenix, a student and school improvement organization. She'd earned a BA from Johnson C. Smith University, a Master of Arts at George Peabody College for Teachers, and her doctorate in Educational Administration from Vanderbilt University. We thank Dr. Williams for all that she did and gave to this district. We thank her family for sharing her with us for 35 years. Her presence in this city went way beyond the things that she did in the classroom and in our school buildings, and she will be missed. We have a proclamation here for National Hispanic Heritage Month, and I practiced all the names with Jeannie. So, the Metro Nashville Public Schools supports the recommendation of the Equity and Diversity Department and the Hispanic Heritage Month Committee, comprised by Marichelle Bonifacio, Susana Couch, Ruben de Peña, Laura Escalante Ramos, Ana Marina Evansizer, Dr. Maritza Gonzalez, Claudia Humphrey, Carlos Moncayo, Ernesto Ortega, Amira Palacios, Allison Ross, Jose Sauceda, Nere Vargas Ortega. Ooh, good job. Okay. To approve the attached proclamation declaring September 15th to October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month in Metro Nashville Public Schools. During National Hispanic Heritage Month, we recognize the contributions made and the important presence of Hispanic Americans to the United States and celebrate their heritage and culture, whose roots in this country go back to 1968. Celebration of the month goes back to 1968. That was me. Whereas Hispanics have had a profound and positive influence on our country through their strong commitment to family, faith, hard work, and service. They have enhanced and shaped our national character and with centuries-old traditions that reflect the multi-ethnic and multicultural customs of their community. And whereas approximately 26% of our students across MNPS are Hispanic and represent countries including but not limited to Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba, Chile, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, and many more. And whereas nearly 20,000 of MNPS students come from a household where Spanish is spoken at home, and whereas we are proud to recognize and honor the rich heritage and cultures of our students, families, and Nashville community, be it therefore resolved, the Metro Nashville Board of Public Education issues this resolution to proclaim September 15th to October 15th to be Hispanic Heritage Month in Metro Nashville Public Schools. We encourage all staff, students, families, and residents to join in celebrating the collective ingenuity, creativity, cultures, and traditions of Hispanic Americans, and to continue honoring the contributions of Hispanic Americans throughout the year.
Motion to approve is introduced.
Second. I have a motion to approve the resolution and a second. Motion made by Mr. Pinkston and second by Ms. Shepherd. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any opposed? And 2 people not here. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. And finally, So I think I shared at the last board meeting my key moment from Judy Ringer, and it was a 3-part series. I jumped in on number 2, so we're just gonna go to number 3 and wrap it up. But it's very timely, I think, just given where we are. And so she shares this thing, and it all starts off with a failure to communicate. And so her third subtitled, Consider Your Purpose. Consider your purpose when communicating. So she starts off with a series of questions. Says, it occurred to her that the purpose of any conversation is intimately connected to the purpose. She says we should ask our questions, why do I hold certain conversations and choose not to have others? What makes this one worthy of my energy and time? How would things unfold if I didn't bring up the issue? And what are the consequences of this decision, both pros and cons? She goes on, and I told you the title of it was Love and Communication, Always Choose Love. And she went on to say, when it comes to purpose, we should question whether we're operating out of love or fear. Is it my intention to help resolve this difficulty? And what attitude is behind my words and actions? And how am I impacting others? And do I even care? How critical am I of myself, of others? And is this helping or hurting my purpose? She writes, I worry about the divergent voices that shout into the field of our social, emotional, and relational world without thinking first. What's my purpose here? What are the reasons I'm about to say or do these things? What are the long-term consequences? So she talks about useful purposes for engaging in conversation and those that are not useful. Not useful if you're expecting people to change their behavior or beliefs just for you, assuming that they'll see their contribution to the problem, justifying that your behavior so that you can appear to be right, assuming that others will agree with you, and thinking, how can I win this argument? The purposes that are useful, learning why they behave as they do or believe what they believe, acknowledging your contribution to the conflict, asking for their thoughts on what happened, and expressing your view without expectation of agreement, and always asking, what can I learn? So she goes on to say, as a facilitator of these kinds of conversations, that it is her goal to hold these conversations in ways that are worth having and not just contests to win or lose, to think more about the process than the outcome. Try to notice when I get attached to an outcome or a judgment as opposed to resolution. Finally, she says she's always watching for how I get in my own way, for how I put up walls instead of building bridges. Judy Ringer's key moment on love and communication. Moving on to governance issues, the consent agenda, Ms. Buggs.
The governance issues, the consent agenda is as follows. 1A, recommended award of contract for professional services for structural engineering services, Ross Bryan Associates, Inc. 1B, recommended approval of supplement number 4 for professional services contract for facilities condition assessment and master planning services, MGT Consulting of America, LLC. 1C, awarding of purchases and contracts. 1, Millviewer, LLC. 2, Teachstone Training, LLC. 3, Tyler Technologies. Madam Chair, I present to you the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Pinkston, second by Ms. Shepherd. Any discussion? All in favor of the consent agenda as read, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Got a push button.
We got a button? Girl, shut up, we got a button. Oh, she's gonna do it. She's gonna push the button. All right, director's report. Mr. Henson.
Thank you, Dr. Gentry. This evening, we'll receive an update on our pre-K program, including some data from our partners with the Peabody Research Institute at Vanderbilt University. We have been on the cutting edge of developing pre-K programs in Tennessee's public schools, and we thank the teachers, paraprofessionals, administrators, and staff who are so committed to early education and so dedicated to serving our students and families. Chief Academic Officer Dr. Monique Felder will jumpstart the presentation and then hand it off to Phyllis Phillips and our pre-K team. So, Dr. Felder.
Thank you, Mr. Henson, and good evening, everyone.
So as you all know, MNPS has a laser-like focus on increasing student achievement in literacy, which is defined as reading, writing, listening, speaking, and thinking critically. Our commitment to increasing literacy achievement begins in pre-K. It begins with our youngest learners, where we have the greatest chance to impact a child's learning, their development, and their future success in school. So tonight's presentation focuses on literacy and achievement in pre-K. You will hear about the challenges we've faced and how we leveraged the pre-K pre-K or preschool development grant and the opportunity it afforded us to work with the Peabody Research Institute at Vanderbilt to address the challenges. So joining me tonight are Phyllis Phillips. Phyllis is the director for the pre-K department. Also joining me tonight is Dana Ekman. Dana is the director for the preschool development grant. And last but certainly not least is Jessica Glendale. Jessica is a teacher at the Cambridge Early Learning Center. So, before we review the outcomes for tonight's presentation, I just want to note that you all should have received via email a lengthy report on the research. Yes, I know, 60-some-odd pages.
That's
yes. But you should have received that, and it is the report from the Peabody Research Institute, and it contains the results of their study, which was in 3 areas: literacy and language, mathematics, and self-regulation. For the purpose, again, for the purpose of tonight's presentation, we will only focus on the literacy and language portion of that report. You should have also received at your seat a hard copy of tonight's PowerPoint presentation. It is a full-paged PowerPoint. It's in a blue folder. Looks like this. Did everyone receive that? Great. So you should have full-paged, numbered PowerPoint slides, as well as an optional capture sheet. However, we would ask that if you could hold your questions and comments until the end. Of course, if you have burning questions, we will happily entertain them. So with that, let's take a look at our outcomes for tonight. So we have 4. So by the end of this presentation, we hope that you would have learned about the literacy challenges in pre-K and how they are being addressed, how we leveraged that PDG grant and our work with the Peabody Research Institute to address them, that you would have gained a better understanding of the literacy practices that are leading to positive outcomes in pre-K, actually have an opportunity to review the data collected by the Peabody Research Institute, and last but not least, have an opportunity to hear from Jessica and hear about her experience with the new pre-K instructional practices. So those are our outcomes for tonight. Any questions about the outcomes? Okay. All right, so to contextualize this presentation, just want everyone to be aware and know that we have 187 pre-K classrooms in the district, and they are spread out in 63 sites, and those 63 sites are comprised of 58 school-based pre-K classrooms, 4 early learning centers, and 1 community-based pre-K program. We are currently serving 2,946 students, and it's important to know that 81% of those students are economically disadvantaged. So that's just to provide a little context about pre-K and MNPS. And so at this time, I'm going to turn things over to Phyllis, and Phyllis is going to talk to you about the literacy challenges that we faced prior to this preschool development grant and how those challenges have been addressed. So Phyllis.
So pre-K faced a number of literacy challenges prior to the awarding of the preschool development grant. And I am going to go through just a few of those. There right there on the screen, and I'll touch on just a few of them. Prior to the Preschool Development Grant, we were unable to provide differentiated instruction or professional development based on teacher needs and initiatives. And since the grant, we've been able to provide teachers a variety of PD opportunities, and we've also been able to deliver them in various modes, such as face-to-face or online training. The next one is the effective use of data to drive instruction. Through coaching supports and PD, teachers and educational assistants are using data more effectively to identify students who may need additional supports during small group instruction and identifying those students who have mastered skills and are ready to move on to more challenging skills. And I do want to point out the area that we continue to work on, and that is the pace in which we're scaling those best practices that are implemented in our early learning centers to our school-based sites. And move on to some of our toughest challenges have been addressed through our work with Peabody Research Institute in a study of our pre-K programs. And as a result of PRI working with schools in the district, on the screen you are seeing the 8 practices that have been identified through the study that would impact literacy achievement. And on the next slide, I'm going to go through just a few of these practices and what we have done to implement some of the strategies that are listed. So the first one is less time in transitions, which shows the need to spend less time moving in transitions. And one way pre-K has reduced the time in transitions while increasing instructional time is through the implementation of family-style dining. Now, family-style dining is when the children eat within the classroom with their peers and the teacher and the educational assistant. Now, this time is very purposeful. It's a time in which the teacher has an opportunity to build vocabulary and oral language and a sense of community, because everyone has the responsibility of serving the meal and cleaning up after the meal. Family-style dining increases opportunities for teachers and students to engage in listening and speaking, which is a component of literacy instruction. I've talked about the second one a little bit when I talked about the differentiated PD, but addressing higher quality of instruction, we've added Hegarty and a Principal Early Learning Institute, and I'll talk about Hegarty first. Hegarty is a supplemental curriculum, and it provides instruction in phonological awareness, which is the awareness of sound structure in words, and it is the foundation for literacy instruction prior to phonics instruction. Last year, we provided PD and instructional resources for classroom teachers to devote explicit instruction in phonological awareness using Hegarty for about 10 minutes each day. We've also created the Principal Early Learning Institute, and this is a workshop provided for the past 2 summers, and we invited principals, assistant principals, EDSSIs, and community superintendents. And this workshop is designed to specifically build the capacity of our leaders in their understanding of early learning and developmentally appropriate practices in the pre-K classroom. Participants left the workshop with resources and materials that they could use in their school sites to provide professional development and coaching supports with their own staff. We've also added some strategies for positive emotional climate, which is our social emotional learning. Teachers I've kind of lost my place, I'm sorry. Ensuring that the classroom has a positive emotional climate for students will help keep students focused and engaged, which will lessen disruptions so that teachers will be able to provide more time and attention to literacy instruction. And that last one I want to point out, it may seem a little odd to include an emphasis on math instruction during a literacy presentation, but there is research that shows more opportunities for math instruction will in turn increase literacy achievement. And now Dana Ekman will review some of the literacy data that we have.
Good evening. As Dr. Felder and Ms. Phillips has previously mentioned, the grant, the Preschool Development Grant, has provided many opportunities for teachers, administrators, students, and families. This is evident through family engagement training provided to build strong academic partnerships, by the purchasing of classroom furniture and engaging materials to go deeper with literacy and math instruction, and by PRI providing research-based evidence to ensure that our pre-K coaches and that our leadership team is offering ongoing quality pre-K professional development. So now we're going to look a little bit deeper, take a closer look at the literacy data provided by Peabody Research Institute. This is for the 2016-2017, wait a minute, that's not correct. This is for the 2017-2018 school year. PRI began collecting data in the fall of 2015. We have worked in partnership with Vanderbilt over the past 3 years to increase the quality of literacy instruction. So to become familiar with these data slides we're going to review, let's look at a brief overview of assessments used to assess our pre-K students. The first bar is the PBVT, which stands for Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test. In this assessment, students are shown 4 pictures, the assessor says a word, and the child points to the picture that he or she identifies the word with. The middle bar represents letter word identification. Children are shown various pictures, the assessor points to a word or letter, the student verbally says the word or identifies the letter to the best of their ability. And the third bar graph to the right represents spelling or writing in pre-K. Writing in pre-K focuses on fine motor development and the process of children writing symbols, letters, and words to convey meaning. In this writing assessment, children are rated on writing their name, along with being able to write lines, shapes, letters, and words when given a prompt by the assessor. So in this slide, let's review a little bit more. In this slide, the light blue bar represents the fall achievement score, and the dark blue bar represents the spring achievement score. The red line is the average national score when comparing MNPS students to similar age students nationwide. Any questions on that?
What's the goal? Is the goal the national average, or have you guys set goals
The goal
for that?
is a national average, correct. When working with Peabody Research, that's what we're shooting for, is that red line. Absolutely. So across these 3 assessments, MNPS pre-K students made a 7 to 9 point gain on all measures. The district demonstrated achievement slightly above the national average for letter word identification. We made gains in both vocabulary development and writing, but continued to be below the national average, which is why we have focused heavily in both of these areas for this school year. This next slide shows a comparison of school-based, am I moving too fast?
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm sorry, Ms. Dr. Felder. Okay. Do you have for these so the students in the light blue box, are they in, is that when they came in? Are these new students?
That's when they entered pre-K in the
Gotcha.
fall.
All right.
Yep, you got it. That's an entry.
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I had a question too. So the average score, what kind of students are those? Are those also students that are being tested by Peabody? Are they also public school children? Are they the same age group? What is the same?
Sure. So
what does that mean?
All students represented in each of these assessments are students that are low socioeconomic. They meet the poverty guidelines to attend pre-K based on the state standards of, am I saying that correct? Economically disadvantaged. And there was basically 85 schools that participated in this study, and the sample size was about 10 students per each classroom.
Got it.
I should say 85 classrooms, not schools, 85 classrooms. Okay? So the next slide shows a comparison of school-based pre-K students and early learning center students' literacy achievement. Again, the blue bars represent the fall to spring data for school-based, and the yellow represents the fall to spring data at early learning centers. The early learning centers demonstrated gains above the national average for both vocabulary development and letter word identification. Emergent writing was at the 90th percentile for the ELCs and the 88th percentile for the school-based students. Again, just demonstrating a need to focus on emergent writing in pre-K. It is also important to note on this slide that school-based students started in the fall with fewer skills, but made similar gains in the spring when compared to early learning centers. This speaks to the pre-K coaching and leadership at our elementary schools. I just wanted to point that out. This next slide, here we go, shows a comparison between MNPS pre-K and Shelby County pre-K in Memphis. This data represents 85 classrooms, as I mentioned just a moment ago, in each district, serving pre-K students meeting the economically disadvantaged poverty guidelines. On this slide, the blue bar represents all MNPS pre-K students. So this would be a combination of school-based and early learning center students that you saw in the previous slides. And the red bars represent the fall and spring data for Shelby County pre-K. Shelby County students scored higher than MNPS students in the fall, but gains were similar in the spring for both school districts. We recognize that Shelby County students demonstrated more skills as they entered pre-K. This is partially due to a strong consortium in Shelby County serving children and families with children birth to ages, let me repeat that, serving children ages birth to 3 and their families. MNPS also has a higher number of students entering pre-K speaking another language other than English.
I'm so sorry. Could you go back one slide?
Sure. So yeah.
For clarity's sake.
Yeah, we're still a little confused. I didn't go to pre-K, that's probably why. I have all these questions. So the students, let's go back to slide, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the slide.
That's the slide,
They
right?
just
So
pulled it
slide
up.
8.
Okay. We want to know the difference between
Who are
the
those
PDG
students? Yeah.
and the
Sure.
ELC.
Okay, so
In the MS, can you go back one more slide? Can you go back to slide 8 with just the blue bars on it? That one right, well, it's 8 in our packet. Yes, this one right here. When you say MNPS overall, like what age, who are these?
These are,
give me some more demographic
sure.
information.
These are pre-K students that are at our elementary school-based classrooms.
So they're not in our standalone ELCs?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The next slide demonstrates this plus the early learning centered students in comparison.
Gotcha.
Gotcha. So the yellow are the standalone ELCs. So it's the
Correct.
same data from the other slide.
Correct.
Just okay. Yes. Yes, it is. All right. And then Shelby County. Okay. So when we go back to blue, so now we're MNPS overall and Shelby County overall.
Correct.
So neither one of these box groups, these graphs represent standalone ELCs.
Correct.
Gotcha. All right, we're with you now.
All right. Okay. So in this graph, MNPS children experience stronger gains in letter word. Is this the right one? Yeah, MNPS children experience stronger gains in letter word identification and spelling than Shelby County when we compare to previous years. So I already went over a little bit of the comparison a moment ago, but I just want to point out that if I would have a slide up there, if we would have a slide up there showing starting in 2015, we have demonstrated every year more gains than Shelby County. And we believe this is attributed to MNPS pre-K curriculum that's developmentally appropriate and also relevant and applicable to students' everyday lives.
Good.
So as the pre-K and Teaching and Learning Department has reflected on this 2017-18 literacy data, we will continue Heggerty phonological awareness. We also will continue interactive read-alouds and shared reading. We'll absolutely continue our Principal Early Learning Institute, which we feel has been highly effective, and we've got just excellent feedback from our administrators and EDSSIs. We also want to make sure we continue to set clear literacy expectations during small group instruction and center time for our pre-K students. And we have also added an emergent writing cohort, and we will be piloting an emergent writing guided reading at 2 of our early learning centers. So a lot of emergent writing work going on. That's okay.
So have we, as of yet, had a cohort of pre-K students to get into kindergarten in one of our overall, yeah? Good so far?
Mm-hmm.
And do we have data on how they are comparing to students who did not attend the early learning centers?
We do have that data.
I know you may not have it with you, but just for a
Correct.
future presentation.
We do have that data, and our pre-K data analyst, Arthur Cunningham, is here, and maybe in the future we can present that. You're welcome. So really, in addition to that, we're going to create some opportunities through our occupational therapists. So our OTs here in the district are trained on handwriting without tears, and it is a research-based best practice that is highly effective for the young children. And so we want to make sure we provide support to our early learning centers, and then we're going to scale that out across the district as well. And with that, there's more. Okay, our coaches, I'm almost done. Our coaches will also be providing professional development on the 8 key practices that impact pre-K student outcomes. For example, on October 12th, this Friday, teachers and paraprofessionals can attend training on how to increase child talk and how to effectively implement shared reading and interactive read-alouds in pre-K. So at this time, I would like to introduce Jessica Gleedell from Cambridge Early Learning Center. Cambridge is located in the southeast quadrant. I actually got to hire her back at Bordeaux, so we know each other well. And she's going to share with you firsthand how these literacy best practices look in the classroom and how they impact students.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to have the opportunity to share with you the amazing literacy opportunities we offer our pre-K students at Cambridge and throughout MNPS. As a former kindergarten teacher of 6 years, I understand the impact that pre-K can have on a student's education. I know that literacy must be taught with urgency to help our children reach their highest potential. I'm truly passionate about the work we do, and I'm honored to work for our amazing pre-K department here at MNPS. In my 4 years teaching pre-K here, the pre-K department has provided so many educational and relevant PDs for pre-K teachers that have helped form me into the passionate educator I am today. I especially found the PDs on shared reading and interactive read-alouds to be very helpful. One of my favorite resources we currently use at my school is Handwriting Without Tears. It is a multi-sensory approach to explicitly teach handwriting in fun, engaging, and developmentally appropriate ways. In pre-K, we incorporate literacy in everything we do. We add meaningful text, writing tools, and paper into all of our learning centers. We establish print-rich environments, starting with the students' names, using that interest in the most important word to them as a springboard for other letter learning. We read and write our morning message each morning. We do an interactive read aloud, shared reading lessons, daily journal writing, class thinking maps during shared writing, and Haggerty. We even have reading and writing opportunities out in our school garden and the playground. I also utilize the Nashville Public Library's Limitless Library Program, and I change out the books in my library center to be relevant to the current season and creative curriculum studies we're diving into at that time. I make sure to have plenty of informational text as well as literature to appeal to all of my readers' preferences and to help build my students' knowledge of the world around them. We build our students' language skills and vocabulary by sitting down and having family-style breakfast and lunch with them. At our school, we use data to drive our instruction. We do daily small groups with every child, and we give them more than, let me rephrase that. We do daily small groups with every child so we can give them more one-on-one attention and literacy and math skills. We have a data wall in our workroom that we keep track of our students' gains in letter knowledge and sounds throughout the year. This helps us differentiate our lessons based on our students' needs. We also encourage our students' families to work with their child at home by sending home weekly classroom newsletters, going on home visits with parents, and meeting them for parent-teacher conferences in the fall and spring. The Family Involvement Department has also done a phenomenal job of providing opportunities for our families to learn how to help their student at home. We also invite our families to a monthly family event night like Bingo for Books in September and the Holiday Literacy Night in December. We've taken field trips to the Nashville Children's Theater to see books like Snowy Day and Dragons Love Tacos after doing interactive read-alouds with those stories beforehand. We even have the Nashville Public Library come and do puppet shows throughout the school year. It is my belief that teachers alone cannot do the important work we do. It takes a village of support from our policymakers, the community, the district office, our pre-K department, administrators, colleagues, and our students' families. Thank you so much for your support and your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so in closing, we want to leave you with a short video from the perspective of a pre-K student and his parents. So please watch for the many best practices that Jessica just shared with you. As you're going to be seeing some writing with meeting, you're going to see students' work displayed throughout the classroom, engaging in developmentally appropriate activities, and look for that positive emotional classroom climate.
Bugs is gonna cry. It hadn't even started yet.
Postpartum is just, I'm sorry.
Drill. It is. Volume.
Metro School's goal is to provide high-quality pre-K across Davidson County. Our students come from a variety of backgrounds that represent Nashville's diverse landscape. The experiences a child has before 5 years old set the framework for the rest of their lives. They need a strong foundation to be successful in school and in life.
It's fun at school. What I learn ABCs and numbers. Different people come and we dance and we have stuff. And we make different music and dance to music.
He's learning how to express himself better socially, which is good. And he's learning to read. I like the learning through play. He doesn't know that he's learning as much as more so I played today and this is what I got from it.
I like the diversity here. He comes home just with so many different stories every day, and the diverse kids that they have. He comes home and I learned French from one of my classmates. This is what's going on in school and I love it.
Currently, Metro Schools offers 187 pre-K classrooms across Davidson County that serve over 3,300 pre-K students. Across the district, we offer a high-quality pre-K curriculum in every classroom which focuses on learning through play. This work wouldn't be possible without support from local, state, and federal dollars to fund our pre-K vision of supporting Nashville's youngest learners.
Don't get the rest.
So at this time, it's
the best part of the meeting.
Well,
okay, there we go.
it was good. It just
yeah.
trusted me. So
Look
at
at a little
this
girl
time,
walking around with a little notebook in her hand, like she was just writing down stuff. It's just, it's amazing.
Probably doodling.
very intentional. So at this time, we'd like to open the floor for any questions or additional comments.
Ms. Shepherd?
Thank you. Because I've always been very obedient and I know how to follow rules, and I wrote my questions down. Just saying.
Oh my God, shade.
Just saying. Okay. So I have a question concerning the four early learning centers. How many classrooms are in that total? Those 4 learning centers total? Do you know?
We made some changes last year, so.
Yeah, we made some changes.
Oh, okay.
This is Arthur Cunningham, and he's our pre-K data analysis.
Thank you, Arthur.
Hey, Arthur.
I know the early learning centers is they're around 40 early learning centers, and we have about 40 locally funded classrooms. And I can get you the exact breakdown too for state, grant, and local and early learning centers too if you need that.
That would be great. I appreciate that. So where is the one community-based pre-K classroom?
That's in East Nashville, and it's McNeely Community Center.
Okay. And I didn't quite get what the acronym PPVT stands for. Peabody.
It's the Peabody Picture Vocabulary Test.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm done.
Ms. Bugs?
I just want to thank you all again, of course, and thank you for inviting us last spring to that early learning summit. I learned so much. You know, it was right after Christopher was born, so I'm just so excited thinking about all the things I'm going to do with him. True, he can't talk yet, but at some point he will. So thank you for all of that. And really quickly, I just do want to send a special shout out to the Vanderbilt students in the room. We would love to have you in MNPS one day. I bleed blue, but I still anchor down because I learned so much while I was at Peabody. So thank you, students, for being here. Please love MNPS. We will love on you back.
Thank you. Is that all right?
So with Handwriting Without Tears, how long has that been implemented?
It had started this year.
Okay.
We had provided training 2 years ago, but it was not being implemented fidelity. This is the first year we're actually implementing fidelity across the ELCs and at Smith Springs Elementary.
Okay, so it's not in the school-based classrooms.
Correct. Cambridge is a little ahead of the game where Jessica's at because the principal just took the lead to implement it. But our training is actually coming up for OT specialists to train all of the teachers, and should be implementing it by November.
I know Matt Mann well, so.
Oh, I love Matt Mann.
Yeah, I know Matt Mann very well.
For those of you that wonder what Matt Mann is, it's support around body and spatial awareness for our pre-K students.
Big deal.
The eventual goal is to scale it to all pre-K classrooms.
And when is that goal date? Is that by the end of the year, next year?
That will depend on funding, just being very honest.
Okay.
We like that.
Yeah, we get that.
And then, I'm sorry, I have a follow-up to that. So with Handwriting Without Tears, is the hope that implementing it, whether it's through the Cambridge programs or, of course, throughout all of our classrooms, is that to increase our average scores through spelling because it deals with symbols, letters, and letter creation?
Yeah, ultimately, everything that we're doing is to impact or increase student achievement with regards to literacy. So yes.
Okay.
It also supports our teachers, especially our new teachers, because teaching handwriting at pre-K looks very different than what they're trained in with higher ed.
It is.
So it gives a framework to scaffold that.
Okay. Got it.
Can you talk a little bit about how this looks different when you're working with English learners in a pre-K setting? Are the strategies the same for literacy, or do you differentiate?
Well, I have over 9 Arabic families and 2 Spanish speaking in my class. Over half mine are ELL this year. And the great thing is a lot of them already have a little background knowledge with English. So, but it does, like Handwriting Without Tears especially, is very helpful because it starts with the foundation of shapes that are build letters, like big lines, little lines, big curves, little curves. And so, because I try to think as a child that's learning a brand new language, like, what are these symbols my teacher's trying me to memorize? And I think it's very helpful because they have these tools that are helping our students, especially the ELL students, learn how these letters are formed. So I feel like it's very beneficial.
Mrs. Bush?
Hello, Cambridge. How y'all doing? You're in my district, of course. This is my field. You guys know I love this. As I pass to go to my child care academy, I am very impressed on how you guys direct traffic. Do a very good job. Yes. Yeah, you guys are doing a great job. One of the things I had a question about was the letter word. Are we doing any sight words with the kids? I know literacy is top priority for our preschoolers. Are we doing any sight words? I know by the time they enter into kindergarten.
Well, I think a lot of our teachers, especially at Cambridge, we kind of differentiate among that. So if we have students that are ready to read, we definitely work, like individualize that for the students that are ready. And then there's some students that we're still working on, forming letters and understanding the sounds. So I think that's all about differentiating at that age, to be honest.
Thank you.
And I would just add that, concepts of print is embedded in everything we do in pre-K. And so through the creative curriculum, it's truly done in a developmentally appropriate way versus, okay, we have these 50 words we have to make sure you get prior to K. It needs to be relevant to the students' lives. And so when they actually make meaning behind it, they start applying it. So we have concepts of print everywhere, letter ID and words, but then they're able to use it and apply it on a regular basis. That's the key.
Okay. So now to the questions I actually did write down. I think you did address one. So I would assume that when you talked about on slide 4, being able to scale, and I can't remember what it was you were referencing specifically, but anytime you reference scaling, is this about funding and just having the resources to be able to get certain practices and professional development or skills across all of our early learning centers? So this is really a resource. This is a how you can help board comment. Okay, so we always want to make sure we're very clear with us that we operate in 3 spaces, in 3 spaces only. We operate in budgeting, in policies to support the work that you're trying to do, and we evaluate the director of schools. But if we're not budgeting and supporting, the evaluation get kind of difficult, and it's easier for us to budget and support when you tell us what you need, okay? So don't ever be shy, just put it on out there. Please think of us in your budget next year so that we can scale these wonderful things across all of our early learning centers. And I just want to echo whatever, one more question. You mentioned the parent-teacher conferences. Are the parents really engaged? Do you really get good participation in those? Because we have some high schools that would love to know what you're doing.
Oh, definitely. Usually have a great turnout. If they can be there, they're usually there.
Very good.
And the home visits we started implementing last year have been wonderful because it's a really great relationship building, and I really hope that continues.
Excellent, excellent. Ms. Bugger? Oh. There you go. Stay on it. Stay on it. Stay on it. Trust me, if you don't give us a charge, we get into all kinds of stuff, as you know. So,
I do have a question about the scaling. With us having so many daycare providers who do need that professional development that you all offer, is there anything in your scaling that would partner with, as the city is trying to do, that would partner with some of these daycare providers that are not using best practices but could use your expertise?
So early on, we were doing work with Mayor Briley, and we were addressing that very issue, and it kind of came to a halt, but I think it's going to pick back up.
Okay.
And that's one of the specific things that we're looking at is PD that will not only address public school pre-Ks, but private providers, and that we all partner together because we're all ultimately trying to reach the same goal, preparing kids for kindergarten.
Okay, so for the viewing public, private providers, the goal is eventually to have private providers brought into the fold so that they can get some of these PDs for both their teachers, the administrators, owners, all that.
Exactly. I wish I could call up Mary Lawrence, but she's with somebody. She led that work, but yes, that is ultimately the goal.
Wonderful.
Ultimately, the goal is high-quality pre-K experiences, whether a child is in a community-based program, in a school-based program, in an ELC, privately run. We just want to ensure that our students
Best
have
practices all the way around.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Shepherd?
So here comes the money question. When does this federal grant end, and what are your plans to sustain this wonderful work?
The federal grant ends, this is the last year, right? So June 30th. We do have carryover funds to take us through December of 2019. And we're currently working on our sustainability plan. So short term to cover those costs for spring, and then long-term plans beyond that to keep our 22 classrooms open. And of course, those important positions to continue quality.
I just have to say, this is always the happiest group that comes and presents. It is. I mean, for the ELC, I'm with the, yeah. I know what to do when I have a bad day at work. I'm just going to go sit in ELC.
Pre-Ks for sure.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This was fantastic. Thank you so much. I appreciate the work. I appreciate you, and I say this all the time. I'll say it again. I appreciate seeing that you guys are still focused. You're still focused on what matters in the midst of the crazy. I do appreciate it. I know it's not easy, and I apologize for the distractions that we throw your way, but thank you so much for being focused on what matters and doing what's best for our kids. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Mr. Henson.
All right, Dr. Gentry. Our students took MAP assessments for reading and math near the start of school this fall. As you know, the MAP assessments compare achievement and growth to a national average, giving us a broad perspective on our students' academic performance. The results of the fall assessments not only set the baseline to measure progress for this school year, they also show progress over a full calendar year, which helps pinpoint other factors like summer learning loss. Perhaps more importantly, the results and the fact that we received the results so quickly help guide instruction at the classroom level in time to address deficiencies and build on strengths for every student. Dr. Paul Changus will provide details of our MAP assessment results. Dr. Changus.
Thank you, Mr. Henson. Pleasure to be here in front of you again to talk about our latest MAP results from August. And as Mr. Henson pointed out, the primary purpose of these assessments is the instructional value they provide. We're using them for many reasons, including monitoring progress of our schools and so forth, but and also as predictors of performance at the end of the year on 10 Ready. But hopefully the most value comes when teachers are able to identify the specific areas that students are doing well in and where they're struggling. And using that information to differentiate instruction, to have conversations around the data, and hopefully identify best practices along the way. So I'm going to be providing an overview of the August results. And what we see as a continued trend that our reading scores are outpacing our math scores relative to the nation. And we'll get into the specifics in just a minute with regard to those national percentiles. This year we added the 9th grade as a mandated grade. We had some schools that had tested at alternate grades, including grade 9 before, but this is the first district-wide assessment. And we saw in our, again, reading outperformed was higher than math, but our ninth graders scored at the national average, the 50th percentile this fall. As Mr. Henson mentioned, one of the key factors that led us to going with the MAP assessment is that it not only allows us to look at achievement relative to the nation, but also academic growth. This assessment's attempted by over 8 million students nationally, so that we have very strong norms. The growth that we made from August to August, and again, as he pointed out, this year's August scores will be our baseline going forward, and we have key performance indicators, KPI, that will monitor the progress over the course of the year. But we're able to look from fall of 2017 to fall of 2018, and we're essentially equal to the national average, a little bit below in terms of the median national percentile, a little bit above when you look at the percent of students who met or exceeded their projections, and those projections are based on national norms. We saw that slightly over half of our students in grades 2 through 9 met or exceeded those projections. Getting into the specifics with regard to reading, there's a lot of data here over the 6 administrations, district-wide administrations of MAP and reading going back to 2016-17. I'm going to highlight the two comparison administrations that we're focused on in terms of where are we now compared to a year ago. And overall, we're down 1 percentile point, but that's including the 9th grade data this year. But at most grade levels, we saw an increase. Where we see a decline is in the 2nd grade. And it's a pretty significant one, from the 45th percentile at the start of last year to the 30th percentile. One of the things we think is a factor there, and we're looking at, is we changed the version of the test that's used in the 2nd grade this year. MAP has a K through 2 version and a 2 through 5 version. And in the past, we were allowed to change versions over the course of the year so that we could use the K2 at the beginning of the year and switch to 2.5. However, that is no longer the guidance that NWA provides. They have concerns about trying to match from one form to the other over the course of the year, and that's new guidance that they provided this year. When we looked at our data, we had to make a decision one way or the other which way we were going to go. We saw that less than 10% of our students seemed to the K2 version seemed to be the most appropriate version based on their test score. So we've gone with the 2 through 5 version, and it is a little bit of a harder test, and we're not sure. In theory, it's an adaptive test. Regardless of where we start, we hope to end at the same place in terms of predicting performance, but we do think there's a little bit of an impact there, and that's something we'll look at over the course of the year. With regard to the 9th grade, as I pointed out in the opening slide, we're at the 50th percentile. At the 9th grade in reading, the lowest performance, as I pointed out, was at the 2nd grade. Again, these are raw achievement scores, not the growth scores. In mathematics, we've had 4 administrations of the MAP going back to last fall, 2017. When we look at fall-to-fall comparisons, our overall median national percentile is the same. What we're seeing, again, is a decline at grade 2, but all other grades have gone up. And these are different cohorts, but what we're hoping to see is growth over time. Now the key is the progress we make from August through the end of the year. And we look at that February assessment, which is a leading indicator for 10 Ready, as kind of a 3rd quarter score and where we are in terms of achievement, with 10 Ready being the end of year assessment. And we did see strong correlations last year between the 10 Ready and the MAP scores. So while we're looking at the next slide here, slide 5, we're seeing a lot of information relative to the growth that our students made from fall of 2017 to fall of 2018. And so the first column after the grade level is just the number of students that have growth data, 2 years of data over these assessments. The relatively small number at grade 2 is because grade 1 was not a mandated grade last year, so those are students whose schools chose to give the MAP assessment. When you look at the next column, you see the median growth national percentile. That's the score for our typical or middle child. If you ranked all of our scores from top to bottom and took the middle score, you'll see for grades 2 through 9, we're at a 49. That means that our typical child outscored 49% of students nationally in terms of growth, in terms of the progress they made over the course of the year. The next column shows the average Rit growth. Now, the Rit is a scale score that's used in these assessments to look at progress over time. So the Rit score should go up from year to year, grade to grade. But this is telling us how much growth students made over the course of the year. So second graders made a 13.1 gain on average. The national average is the next column. The projected score would have been a 13.0. Targets are set individually for each student based on where that student started at the beginning of the year. What you see in green are those scores that exceed the national average in terms of percentile or Rit growth or percent of students meeting or exceeding their projection. Anything in red is below the national average, even if it's slightly above or slightly below, it's color-coded. What we're seeing overall is, again, we're slightly below 1 percentile point below on median growth percentile, but over half of our students meeting or exceeding projections, whereas nationally 50% of students would be expected to be there. Again, grade 3 is now here grade 3 stands out. We were looking at grade 2 baseline data from the prior year, and again, that's where we were using a different version of the test. So hopefully the version difference is a factor, but that's the one grade level that's below the national average in terms of growth. When we look at mathematics, we see that we were overall 2 percentile points below the national average, but again, a little over a point above in terms of the percentage point above in terms of the percent of students meeting projections. But we do see some variety by grade level in terms of performance, with again, grade 3 being a concern. But grade 6 is also a few points below grade level. But we see a couple of grade levels, grades 4 and 8, where over 60% of our students are meeting or exceeding their targets, and grade 9 at 58%. The graph on slide 7, there's a lot of information here. The main takeaway is when we break down our fall results by student subgroup, from all students down to the various ethnic subgroups, economically disadvantaged versus non-economically disadvantaged, English learners versus non-English learners, and students with disabilities versus the general population, we see tremendous variation in terms of where the typical child is scoring relative to the nation. These are achievement scores. So for all students, we're seeing that our typical student outscored 40% of students nationally on as a one-time measure of achievement in reading. In math, again, the math scores are consistently lower than we saw in reading. But this is a pattern that we've seen consistently across the various achievement tests we've taken, again, based on one-time measures of achievement. I think one of the things that stands out here, our economically disadvantaged students there's a significant gap with a non-ED. We're at the 25th percentile for ED students, economically disadvantaged in reading, compared to 50% for their comparison group. In mathematics, at the 21st percentile versus the 42nd percentile. Now, historically, we know that one-time measures of achievement are highly correlated with socioeconomic status. That's not the case with growth. So on this slide, we're looking at growth from fall of 2017 to fall of 2018 by subgroup. And the red line in the middle of that graph at the 50th percentile, that's the national average. And you see that most of these scores are right around that 50th percentile. In a few cases, they differ by more than a couple percentile points. On reading, for instance, our Black economically disadvantaged students with disabilities are more than 4 or more points below the national average. Our Asian students are above. I'll just point out the Hawaiian Pacific Islander you see fluctuates greatly between reading and math. That's 22 students over a period of a year, so not a very reliable sample size. But in mathematics, we see, again, similar trends in terms of the growth, with most of those scores being right around the 50th percentile. Again, our African American and Black students, multi-ethnic, and economically disadvantaged, and students with disabilities are a little bit below. Our English learners are making above average growth in mathematics. As you might expect, they're slightly below in reading, which is where the language issue is a challenge. But we've historically seen very good growth for our English learners, not only while they're being actively served, but after that service is ended and they transition. So again, this just reinforces there's a big difference in terms of achievement versus growth measures by subgroup. So now we're going to end with looking at some data by quadrant, and we have both achievement and growth data by quadrant. The Northwest quadrant we are showing in 2 different rows, one with all of the schools in the Northwest quadrant, and the next row below that with the asterisk is when we've removed the academic magnet schools from the data. So for the median national percentiles, we see quite a bit of variation from quadrant to quadrant. But if we look at the last column on the far right, at the percentage of those students tested who are economically disadvantaged, we also see very significant differences between the quadrant. And again, that reinforces that pattern that we're trying to make, which is trying to break, which is that there's a strong relationship between, again, one-time measures of achievement and economic disadvantage. With regard to growth, once again, we see a lot more consistency, most of those quadrants within a couple of percentile points of the national average. And in terms of projections, again, very close to the 50% mark, which is the national average in terms of growth, in terms of looking at the percent of students meeting their target. And finally, mathematics, again, great variation with regard to achievement, very similar growth patterns, generally around the national average. So where do we go from here in terms of emphasis this year? We're going to continue doing training with our educators. We've had the assessments in place for about 1.5 years prior to the start of this year. But this is the first time with the 9th grade, so we've been doing training of high school educators with the use of this data. Not every school has a data coach, so we've been doing more district-wide trainings around the use of the map for educational, instructional purposes. We've been working more closely, my team, with the LTDSs, the literacy specialists in the schools, and particularly the lead LTDSs, to provide more district-wide training. We have those individuals in each building, and we want them to fully utilize the results. We're also holding office hours, my department, on a regular basis for schools or district staff to come in and sit down with their data, not just MAP, but any of the assessment data. And we've had a lot of takers already, particularly with regard to the 10-ready data that recently came out. We're continuing to develop with our technology team data warehouse reporting that's specific to the needs of schools, including more reporting around the MAP assessment. They're very good MAP instructional tools on their website, but we also pull a lot of that data into our data warehouse to look at multiple measures for students. And we have a Kpi dashboard that rolled out this fall that has not only the MAP data in terms of where each school is, where the district is on the two KPIs, the growth KPI, but also the percent of students in the top 2 quintiles, the 61st percentile or higher. We have targets for each school that are in there, but it also allows schools to see how they compare with other schools in terms of their growth, in terms of their progress. The third bullet here, for the first time, NWA, the test vendor, has pulled statewide data from the districts in Tennessee that use the map and correlated that to the 10 ready. And they've, as we saw last year, they're very high correlations. So they have started including projections to the 10 ready assessment to the achievement levels. And that's going to happen after each assessment. So teachers, students can see where they're projected to be if they only make average progress from this point on. Our task is to change that trajectory to make above average progress. In the past, we've focused on quintile performance on the map in terms of achievement because we didn't have projections to 10 ready. My hope is that our reports will shift more and more to not what percent of students are in a particular quintile or percentile band, but what percent of our students are on the trajectory to be mastered, on track, and so forth. So that's where we're going this year in terms of that reporting. And finally, we send out reports after each administration, standard reports from NWA that have their percentile scores, their historical data from previous assessments, but we have supplementary materials to go home and that are translated with those reports, but we're going to be developing individualized letters for parents in the future. We did have one individualized letter last year that went home and was translated in 5 or 6 languages, but it also and we're going to do that after the November administration to also talk about 10 ready performance as well as MAP performance and help parents identify if their child qualifies for an academic magnet. But we want to develop a standard report, individualized for each student that's going to be in our data warehouse that schools can print off and have in timely fashion to go home. And of course, putting that information in the parent portal so parents have that data electronically. So with that, I will take questions.
Walker?
Can I just say Ms. Walker?
You can, yes.
Okay, Mrs. Walker.
Yeah. So I really appreciate all the disaggregation here. That's really helpful. And I'm just now wrapping my head around MAP. So I'm glad to hear that there's a strong correlation with T and Ready.
Yeah, the correlations last year were 0.8 or higher at every grade level in reading and at 0.8 or higher in every level except grade 8 in mathematics. They were 0.77 in math. In math, a lot of our 8th graders, as you know, take end-of-course tests, and we're not included that sample. But we can also share.
Good.
0.8, 0 would be no correlation, a 1.0 would be perfect correlation.
Gotcha.
What we're seeing is that about 75 to 80% of the time we can accurately predict the achievement level for a student. We think that'll get better with the use of statewide data and not just metro data now that NWA is involved.
So you said that you guys are going to try to translate these quintiles into, or the state is, into mastery, mastered or on track?
I took a stab at it last spring using our data alone, and that was the data. When I talk about the correlations and the 75% to 80% accuracy, that was with the data we utilized. The test vendor, NWA, is doing that using statewide data now. And that is actually, that's available right now to teachers. They can go in and look at a report that shows that projection. We're going to have that after each test administration, not just the spring administration.
And can I, maybe this is just too much in the weeds, but can I get a sense for how this information is being used in schools to design PD, to design, to reshape, instruction to adjust?
Yeah, and I can tell you a few things from my perspective, but I'd be happy to work with curriculum and instruction and other departments to get a more complete summary. We have some teachers who serve on our district assessment committee, and we've had some conversations with them. And we last year at one of our administrator and supervisor meetings, we brought in teachers who had extraordinary results to share some of their practices. In terms of differentiating instruction-based, the MAP reporting provides information on which skills, which standards students are ready to learn, kind of where they're at a point that they've done very well mastering the prerequisite skills and standards. And it gives you a list of students at different points of that scale that are helpful for differentiation. In talking to some of our school leaders, when teachers share their practices, and we have a variety of practices in place in terms of the use of the data and how, we have data coaches who are in the field, and probably we can compile some, I think, some.
I'm just curious how much it's
information.
informing practice day to day. These like this August.
Well, and I'll just be honest that it's gonna vary quite a bit from school to school and classroom to classroom. That's something we want to see increase in terms of the use. And I'll just, as someone who's been in the district for a long time, and I've shared this concern with the board, I don't know that we've historically done a great job of sharing best practices, which is why I was encouraged that we started doing more of that last year in terms of bringing, at those A&S meetings, it's one thing to hear it from a principal, it's another to hear it from a classroom teacher. And so that's what I'm hoping we'll do more of in terms of that sharing.
A couple more questions. Are charters included in these numbers? Do charters offer the MAP test?
Charters are not included. They had the option. There are several charters that use the NAA MAP, and they have the option to buy off of our contract. However, to do that, they have to follow our test administration calendar. It's a limitation of the reporting. And so because of that change, most of them did not want to lose that historical pattern. However, we are going to be capturing their data with downloads to pull that out. That's something that Dennis Queen has asked for.
I just wanted to chime in on the sharing of best practices. So another structure that we have to share best practices would be our curriculum instruction update meetings. And so those meetings are facilitated monthly. In ELA and in mathematics is an opportunity for the principal, the LTDS for ELA, and 2 to 3 other staff members to convene to build their capacity on data literacy, as well as content around ELA, literacy, or mathematics. So that's just another opportunity to build capacity and share best practices in the district.
Okay.
And when I mentioned that our team has been meeting more frequently with the LTDSs, it's around that goal of sharing in those meetings. And there is a monthly update from our department in terms of the data use. So we think that's going to be our best vehicle to get this down into more classrooms.
Okay, thanks so much.
Sure.
Anyone else? Hi. I just had a few questions. How many of our students are on grade level when it comes to reading? They're reading grade level. I didn't see. Did I miss it in this presentation?
Well, that's a very complex question because.
Could you restate your question, please? Could you restate your question? I couldn't hear your
How many
question.
of our students on their reading level, as far as their grade level, are they reading?
Or reading on grade level?
Reading on grade level. Because I was trying to look for it in here and I didn't see it.
Well, there's a reason you don't see it because there's not a, and I've had this conversation with members of the board in the past. There's not a common definition of what it means to be on grade level. On a nationally normed test, a lot of times we fall back to what percentage of students are at or above the national average on a test. But that doesn't necessarily mean that students have the grade level skills. It just means that they're average. We don't and there's quite a bit in the literature about how we define that, and it varies from test to test. If you look at a 10-ready assessment, it's telling you what % of students have mastered the standards at a particular grade. That's not necessarily the same as telling us if they're on grade level. We do have other assessments that look at skill deficits, and we have some information here in terms of students' reading skills, and we can look, on the MAP assessment and see how they're doing in the lower grades in terms of print concepts, phonics, literature, informational text, et cetera. But there's not a common definition. NWA would say that the closest thing they have is a % of students that are at or above the national average. If you look at our median national percentiles, those numbers are going to be pretty close to what we can share what % of students are above the 50th percentile. They're going to be pretty close to the numbers we're seeing here.
Paul, I have one more question.
Oh, hold on.
I'm so sorry.
So is our achievement gaps widening? I mean, because it's like it's flat. It's not, it's like it'll go up a little, then it'll go down a little. I mean.
Yeah, so what you see is in terms of growth, so we know there's significant gaps in terms of where they are in August. When you look at the growth that occurred over the course of the year by subgroup, you will see that economically disadvantaged students tend to be a point or two below typically, and in this case, if you look at economically disadvantaged versus non-economically disadvantaged, the gap, you could say that the gap widened by 4 percentile points on this administration over the past year. What you're seeing in reading, in mathematics, there's another 4-point gap. One of the things I looked at, we looked at fall-to-fall comparisons, but I also looked at this data for individual students last February and the students that tested again this August to look at a matched sample of students in terms of the change that occurred. And we saw a decline in both reading and math on average of about 2 percentile points. That points to it's not just necessarily summer loss, but that does point to a summer loss issue. And typically summer loss issues are influenced by the socioeconomic factors. We had a number of literacy summer programs in place this summer that we're now looking at MAP data, at FAST data, and assessments that were given in those summer programs to try to measure whether we mitigated some of that summer loss with these programs for the students that attended. But if we see a widening of the gap, part of that continues to be over the summer, but there is a little bit of a gap that increased based on this one-year data.
And also, are the growth goals at every school? Is that how it's measured?
There are targets set at every school and by grade level in terms of the % of students that are meeting and exceeding their projections, as well as the % of students in the top 2 quintiles. But for every individual student, a RIT target goal is established based on the NWA national data. And we can use that information to set targets to at least meet the national average. But if we want to make even greater growth, and as we now have the projections to achievement levels, we can set some meaningful targets to get a child from one performance level to the next performance level.
And so what's been done? Because when I'm looking at these numbers when it comes to reading and math, and I'm looking at the data between subgroups, I'm a little concerned about what is it in place to support these students that are below, way below the national average that's been presented.
Bush, and just to make sure we answer your first question, in every school in Metro, there's what we call the key performance indicators, which we put in last year that talks about specifically data points that schools have to grow, which are about 3 to 5% growth. So MAP is one of the assessments that each school uses to look at their growth. And then as Dr. Chang has stated, they look at the RIT scores, which is a component in the MAP assessment to see where they are to grow every single year.
So what support are we giving the students that are way below the national average? When I look at the numbers, it's not this one. It is page 7.
So before you respond, I want to contextualize, Dr. Changus, because I believe you said earlier that how schools address what they see in MAP scores are individual. They're individual at the schools. There's school-based plans, and then there are student-based plans within the school. So I just want to make sure that before we give a response that's generalized, that maybe we can move this to a teaching and learning committee discussion and maybe have a couple of principals come and share the kinds of strategies that they use.
So I was going to say, we could spend an entire session.
Yeah, so that's
on this
a
topic,
bigger.
'cause this gets into
Well, my
not
concern
only the school.
But my concern is that if we're going to talk about this and we're going to be we're going to have presentations about this, then I do want these questions to be answered. You don't have to go way out, but I do want to know about the support.
Yeah, but what we're talking about goes into curriculum and instruction, multi-tiered systems of support, interventions. You're talking about students with disabilities, English learners. There are a variety of things that play into this. So,
and that's what I would like to see. Besides, if I could see that information, then I wouldn't question. So I guess in this information, if I would have seen it, it would have been great.
So again, that's more appropriate, school level, very different. That could be a
there are school
very deep
level,
report.
there's school level and a district level component of this that
Correct.
could be addressed.
So I think that would be a great teaching and learning committee topic. So we will get it recorded.
What does your department do? What does your department do? Do you work with those?
We work with those departments. Our role is overseeing the assessment and reporting and the evaluation of programs in initiatives in the district. But we work with curriculum and instruction. We work with the other departments, but we don't do the direct service provision there. Other than data coaches that report to our office, and that's more around the interpretation of the data rather than the instructional component.
Mrs. Walker?
I'm good.
You sure?
Yep.
All right. Ms. Elrod, you had a question? No. You're good? Ms. Shepherd? Good. All righty. Ms. Buggs, are you done? Good.
Just to say thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the data.
A lot of work.
The data department always comes through with great information.
Yeah. So before we move on, I want to do just clarify a couple of things. So I just want to make sure, I'm big on words because I keep telling y'all I'm green and this is what happens. So I just want to make sure, and I don't mean to insult anybody, but as Ms. Buggs would say, for the media and the viewing public, when we say that the administration, we're talking about not about the under whose administration. This data is a reflection of just when the test was administered, right? For Dr. Changus, I'm correct with that, right? And so when we do the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting, Dr. Changus, if you could be prepared to just talk about just achievement gaps in the district over the years. Those things have fluctuated because the tests have fluctuated, and so that the differences that we see can also be a reflection of the changing in these types of assessments that we're using. And Dr. Changus, you might want to come back because I need people to see you nodding your head yes to these things that I'm saying. I'm not making it up. So as I look at the data, and again, that's from the perspective of a board member and what I can help to impact and message, is that overall we are improving in grades 3 through 8. Would that be a fair kind of high level? There's definitely work to be done. As we look at the disaggregated data, there are definitely subgroups that need a little more massaging and attention, as Mrs. Bush has pointed out. But overall, in grades 3 through 8, which is where we have put the majority of our focus and resources, so we're sort of getting results from where we've given attention.
So that's a complex question. We are seeing progress, but it's a mixed bag, to be honest. And what we saw, so MAP is one component in terms of measuring the progress. 10 Ready obviously is another. And what we saw last year was good growth over the course of the school year. We lost a little of that momentum over the summer, but when you looked at our 10 Ready scores last year, we made progress in literacy and in science in 3 through 8 relative to the state. And we lost a little bit of ground in mathematics. And while our focus is on literacy, we also know we've got to work on the math.
But yes, Summer Slide isn't something that Nashville Public Schools created, right?
Not something we created. And I'll be happy to share the historical achievement gap data, and to provide context, perhaps look at our subgroups relative to other similar subgroups across the state on 10 Ready, if we can get some national data from the map. The subgroups that we're struggling with are a struggle nationwide,
Correct.
unfortunately. And I wish there were easy answers to how to reduce that gap.
We all do. We all do. So the final thing I wanna to point out, and I don't know, I guess Ms. Shepherd, you may be able to either correct me if I'm right or wrong on this. So I just have a confession to make that when I know you're about to report, I get a little anxiety because I always feel like I'm going to be totally confused because you use like big words and stuff. And so I'm getting the feeling that this is like in the past couple of years, we've gotten a better picture of where our students are. Can you speak to that? Because I know we used to get reports, and I still, at the end of the day, could not stand and say, this is where we are in math, and this is where we are in reading. So how has the introduction of assessments over the past 2 years and the way we're dealing with assessments and the vendors we're using, how has that given Dr. Changus a better view of how our students are performing?
The MAP assessment has provided more consistency for us in a world of changing academic standards and changing performance standards on state assessments. To be honest, and I've been working with state data in either in the district or at a state level for the past 30 years. It's never been more complicated than it is right now to follow trends using the statewide data. With MAP, we have consistency for the most part with regard to how we're performing relative to the nation. And the feedback, and you're never going to get 100% agreement from in a district this size from teachers on any assessment or any other educational issue, but we've gotten a lot of positive feedback in terms of the MAP assessment and the instructional value. So yes, that's been a positive.
Well, thank you very much again for all of your hard work. And I saw the slide change, so it must be time for yet another report. Recruitment and retention.
Yes, the final update is recruitment and retention. As we all know, employees are the lifeblood of any organization, and it's especially true in education. A great teacher in every classroom is imperative to the success of our schools and our city. And we're not the only school system in the market for great teachers, so our effort to recruit and retain the highest quality employees must be fruitful for us to reach the desired outcomes for our students. To provide an update on staff recruitment and retention, Chief Human Resources Officer Deborah Story and her team. And so I'll turn it over to Deborah.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening.
Good evening.
This is my third, or the HR's third time since I've been here of giving a recruitment and retention report. This evening, I'm going to pass the mic over to Sharon Pertiller, the Executive Officer for Human Resources Talent Strategy, and Amber Tyus, the Director of Talent Acquisition, and they'll provide the report.
Good evening, and thank you all for giving us an opportunity to provide you with an update tonight on where MNPS is with our recruitment and retention. I did want to share with you guys, you all, that you have a copy of the presentation. I'm going to take my glasses off in case I have to look at something. Let me try this. Yes. You all have a copy of the presentation. There was an update that was made with some additional information based on the business rules from our talent management team. Oh, okay. So now you have a copy. All right.
It's on the iPad.
That's great.
The update is on the iPad.
Oh, okay. Oh, awesome. That's really great. So, first, I'd like to share with you what our objectives are for tonight. We want to detail our current teacher demographics and our existing vacancies throughout the district. In addition, we want to provide you with an update on the district's recruitment and retention efforts, as well as identify our current challenges and the successes that we've had as a district. And last but not least, discuss strategies to address current gaps that we have within MNPS, as well as provide you with an opportunity to ask any questions. So, as a division, as a talent strategy team, we wanted to share with you what our goal is. And again, that goal can only be accomplished because it takes a village, so working with our leaders throughout the district. So talent strategy in general, we want to continue to focus on attracting, recruiting and retaining high-quality teachers and support staff in order to meet or exceed student growth. Obviously, without teachers in the classroom, that student achievement cannot be accomplished. So what are we doing as a district to meet this particular goal? So MNPS, we've aligned our organizational supports, providing HR partners and talent acquisition partners according to the quadrant support model. So what does that mean for our teachers and for our leaders within MNPS? Well, what it means is that now our school-based leaders and our staff, they have a go-to person. They know who to go to for what, whether it is an employee concerned about whether or not their license is up to date, or whether it's a school-based leader wanting to know, does my budget allow for me to add an additional teacher? Where am I? They also assist them with progressive corrective action. They're just a go-to person for everybody within the district. And again, this is our first year, our complete year of this model. We also want to engage in strategic recruitment, partnering with our local colleges and universities, also partnering with the Tennessee Department of Education, TDOE, when it comes to these primary partnership agreements. We're partnering right now with Vanderbilt, Lipscomb, Belmont, and TSU to strategically recruit diverse candidates. And I know you may ask, well, why is that important? Well, studies show that students learn better from those individuals that may look like them. It gives them a role model. In addition, we want to focus on our substitute staffing. So last year, our substitute staffing, our subfill rate was 65%, and it increased to 81%. And what do we attribute that to? Obviously, we attribute it to you guys and you all and the support. I'm so sorry for saying guys. But to you all. To you all, because we moved from a $25 a day sub bonus to $30 a day sub bonus. So obviously that made a difference. In addition to the increase in the sub bonus, we also made it a little bit easier for them to be eligible for that bonus. So instead of having to work a full 2 weeks or full pay cycle in order to receive that bonus, if someone committed to working a full week and they worked 5 days, they would be eligible for that bonus. Another thing that we did with your help is that we added a support bonus, and that's $15 a day. So obviously that made a difference. So those are just some of the pieces of the puzzle. So what were our outcomes for 2017-18? We increased the workforce of teachers with 3 to 5 years of experience by 2%, moving from 11% in 16-17 to 13% in 17-18. As I shared with you earlier, we increased our sub-teacher fill rate from 65.7% to 81% for the as of 9/28/18 when we ran our last report. We also started the first day of school with 92.4 teacher vacancies compared to 124 in the 17-18 school year. And just so you can keep that into perspective, currently we have 5,329 teachers, so that is a big deal. So to share with you what our current teacher demographics looks like and compared to the 17-18 school year. As you can see right now, our teachers of color make up 25.87% of our teacher demographics. That wouldn't seem like a big deal until you take into consideration that the national average for teachers of color is 17.5%. And we did have just a slight uptick in our teachers of color for as of 9/13/18. I also wanted to share with you that for this school year, as of 9/13, we have roughly about the, oh no, I'm sorry. Let me go back and make sure I got this right. Okay, I did share that. That was correct. Okay, I wanted to share our current teacher demographics. And as you can see, this year we increased a little bit with those teachers that were 35 to 45 years of age. And the national average is 40% of teachers are 40 and under. So we're making some improvement in retaining those teachers by age. So next, what I'd like to share with you is gender, as well how we're doing as a district. You can see we did have a slight increase in our male teachers, and I also wanted to share the national average with you on that. And typically 76% of our teachers are female, or that is the national average. So we went down a little bit, but we're still a little bit shy of what the national average of that 76% is. Okay, and some additional information about those individuals that we have on staff right now based on their years of service. We did go down slightly for our first year teachers, but we were able to increase our 3 to 5 year teachers and our 5 to 7 year teachers. So how are we addressing the demographic disparities within MNPS? So some of the things that we have done is we have expanded our partnership with EdForce PCG to include alternative certification pathways for candidates with diverse backgrounds. So what does that mean? It means that some of our parapros, some of our campus supervisors, they have an opportunity to become certified teachers. They already have a propensity or a desire to work within MNPS. So our hope or dreams and aspiration is that they will stay longer, which will also help us with retention. What else are we doing? We've developed primary partnership agreements with local universities. And what does that mean for us? So they sat at a table as part of a consortium. Those 4 schools that I identified, Belmont, Lipscomb, Vanderbilt, and TSU, to help strategically target those high-need areas as well as teachers of color. Again, that goes to the targeted recruitment efforts. We're also partnering with HBCUs, whether it's TSU, Alabama A&M, and even Fisk. And then, in addition, MNPS, our hope is that we will become an EPP, as we have submitted our application, and we're in the final stages of that as well with TDOE review.
Educator prep program?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so what it means is that, again, for some of our parapros and stuff, we will be able to certify them instead of EdForce PCG. Mm-hmm. I also wanted to share with you when we talked about how MNPS started the year out for 17-18 compared to this current school year 18-19. As you can see, we improved in vacancies in every single quadrant. So, where are our current vacancies? As of 10-1, based on our most recent, based on our 10-1 opens report or vacancy report, by quadrant, we had the Northwest quadrant as of 10-1 had 26 vacancies. As you can see, they had 9 exceptional ed vacancies, 1 EL, and 3 math, whereas the Northeast quadrant had 25. 3 exceptional ed, 1 EL, and 1 math. And the Southwest quadrant has 38. Our Southwest quadrant has the 5 exceptional ed, 3 EL, 4 math, and last but not least is our Southeast quadrant with 33 vacancies. Exceptional ed has 8, 9 EL, where you see it's the highest EL quadrant, and then 2 math vacancies. So one might think with those 122 vacancies as of 10-1 that the majority of them would be in our priority schools, but that is not the case. So what we wanted to do with tonight was to share with you that Whites Creek High School is leading the number with 5 vacancies, and then there are only the others, Tom Joy with, I'm identifying those with 3 or more, Tom Joy with 3, Maplewood with 3, as well as Jerry Baxter. Again, we have to keep in mind that we have 5,329 teaching positions. So what are the recruitment strategies? What will we do in order to fill the gaps? Again, we've already started sourcing and screening candidates and strategically targeting MNPS retirees to come in, whether it's exceptional ed or math, just working with those HR partners, working with those school-based leaders, those principals, to go in and intentionally identify whether it's someone that had applied for a vacancy at that particular school. If they have applied for, whether it's an exceptional ed somewhere else, we're trying to skill market those schools to those individuals. We're also working to improve our social media presence. It's really important because people don't want to come work for a place where they don't hear positive things about. They judge us prior to coming to work for an organization. They're going to do their homework. So we have to be intentional about creating a employer of choice presence, as well as we continue to extend early offers and teacher agreements for those high quality candidates. And increasing our collaboration and visibility with our university partners. It's so critical. So that's some of the information. I'd like to take a minute right now to turn it over to Amber Tyus. Again, she's our Director of Talent Acquisition, to share some additional data, but we'll both be available should you have questions.
Good evening. Sharon mentioned some of the recruitment strategies that we're doing, but in order for us to adequately recruit, we first have to understand why we have gaps to begin with. So I'm going to discuss with you some of the exit surveys that we've done. So first we took a look at the exit surveys and exactly what they showed. The exit survey showed that we first had smaller numbers of individuals to respond to the exit survey data than what we would have liked. For the 17-18 school year, we had 105 respondents to respond to the exit questionnaire. And for the 16-17 school year, we had 109 respondents. But in looking at that, we know that participation was low, and we also know that we don't have the LOE data or level of effectiveness data for the 17-18 school year. But even without that, we were able to glean some trends from that data. So we're going to take a look at that. So looking at the 17-18 data, we needed to understand why individuals were choosing to leave the district. First and foremost, the highest number or the highest choice for individuals were just personal reasons, which doesn't tell us a whole lot. But what we did see is that we've seen it come down from the 16-17 school year regarding dissatisfaction with school culture and school climate. For the 16-17 school year, those two areas, for those who chose to respond, we had a 34.5% response rate from those individuals who chose to respond. For the 17-18 school year, it was a 13% response rate. So we've certainly seen that response rate improve from those individuals who responded to the questionnaire. Then we looked at those individuals and what their next steps would be. So for those who chose to respond to the survey, they said that they had accepted another position with the Tennessee School District. So that affects how we choose to recruit for the fall and what we need to do. So we looked at that, and again, 29% of those who responded to this survey and chose to answer accordingly said that they're going to work in another Tennessee district. So we need to be recruiting in-state and not out-of-state, because that was a huge function of what we did last year. And we also need to be intentional, as Sharon mentioned earlier, about extending early agreement offers, especially to our student teachers and our teacher residents. So that is a huge push for us starting this month. The next slide shows the retention for teachers. This is just a 4-year snapshot. As you can see, we are still, we have declined, but we are still above the national average, which is 84%. So we want to continue to make strides and make sure that we stay at least above the national average and continue to make gains in that area. So what are we doing to retain our high-quality teachers? One, we're continuing to improve our work with the new Teacher Academy. We have started NTA Lite, which is just an abbreviated version of the new Teacher Academy for those teachers who are hired after the start of school, so that they too can get acclimated to the system and they can be paired with a mentor. Our mentors have monthly meetups. They are providing institutional and emotional support to our new teachers, so we want to make sure that we catch as many of those as possible. We are also strengthening our wellness efforts. We are returning a wellness center to West Nashville because we understand that worksite clinics reduce teacher healthcare costs and absenteeism, so that's important. We are increasing our leadership opportunities because we want to develop true principal standards to support the research that teacher turnover is lower in schools that are led by a strong principal. And lastly, we want to strengthen our partnerships with MNEA. We want to make sure that we are getting that feedback from them and that in order to improve teacher culture. So these are a few of our expectations for the 19-20 school year. I'm going to give you an opportunity to peruse those, but as you can see, it includes improving the retention rate and also increasing the percentage of teachers of color, because that is important for us. We want to ensure that the demographics of our teachers improve and start to look more like the demographics of our students. Lastly, we want to discuss what are the challenges and how we plan to address those to reaching our expectations for the 19-20 school year. First and foremost, we're under-resourced in the area of recruitment. Our talent acquisition partners are limited. We only have 3 talent acquisition partners currently. Right now, they are aligned by tier and not quadrant, which is what our desire would be. So we have someone for elementary, middle, and high, but we would prefer to align them by quadrant and even have someone for priority schools, since that is an area of concern right now as well. We would even like to add a college recruiter so that we can be more intentional in those efforts. We also are looking to change our ATS, or applicant tracking system. So we are already in the process of working on that. And since that is a huge push and it requires a lot of work, our work teams are completely divided, and that requires a lot of time away from our everyday tasks. So we are understaffed right now in those areas. So in order to target those areas, we are looking to repurpose an already vacant position and realign that person to support the talent acquisition work by quadrant model. But again, that leaves us short with regards to aligning the work with priority schools and college recruiting and some of those other areas. So in order to assist with that, we're also going to utilize the strength of those primary partnerships with Belmont, Vandy, Lipscomb, and Tennessee State University. We recognize that those primary partnerships can help us with building a stronger recruitment and retention model. And lastly, we want to onboard a data fellow because we understand that having strong data is going to assist us when we're looking at retention trends and data trends in general. So that's important work for us in order to make strides down the line. So that's just a snapshot of what we're doing and how we hope to make some gains later on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm pretty sure we do. We're going to work our way around the table. Mrs. Bush, little fingers have been flying over there, so Mrs. Bush, we'll start with you.
So would you go back on your slide 15 for me? Slide 15, yes.
Let's see. I don't know. It might be easier that way. Yep.
Well, first and foremost, children and teachers are dear to my heart. I mean, I have been in Metro schools for over 20 years with my own children, and I've worked on various boards and worked alongside teachers and principals. And I'm having some major concerns where my stomach is burning right now. This, of course, is very concerning, what we're seeing. On slide 15, I noticed that the numbers went down at 791, and the information we received was 840. Which is it?
791 based on the business rules. One of the things that we would like to share with you all is that come May of 2019, we're going to roll out an HRIS system. Right now, we utilize the information that was provided to us by one of our talent management specialist. I'm not sure of his exact title, but he went in and he established business rules. That 840 included those turnovers that left between the last day of school, but prior to 7/1. So when Andrew was asked to pull the data based on a request that we received from a board member for the past, I think she asked for the past 5 years, but based on what he had access to, he was only able to pull it for 4. That request came today. So when he went back and pulled that information, he established parameters for which he was going to use to ensure the integrity of the data. So when he did, we noticed that, hence the update.
So we went from, just so I can wrap my, okay, so you're saying that he changed the data to reflect what now you said?
The parameters of the data. So he had to have like a business rule that he was going to use in order to identify from time to time, just to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. So he identified a date range and he put it in to go back and get that data. So when we had extrapolated the 840 days, we used the last day of school when we shouldn't have. We should have ran it from year to year.
So you don't use it for the you don't calculate that in the last day of school. Is that what you're saying? I'm just trying to understand why the numbers changed drastically. So it went from 840 to 791, and then it went from 790 to 701 for 16-17 school year. So that's why I'm trying to figure out why the data changed so drastically.
Maybe I can articulate. Did he overlap school years? Is that what we're talking about? So information was double counted? Okay.
Correct. He did not include the last day of school because there may be some individuals who are rehired because they may have dropped off. Maybe they were cut because of budget funding or allocation, something along those lines, and they are rehired prior to the school year starting. So if you have to change, you have to run it from September to September rather than May to August.
And we also bridged their employment. So
correct.
Truly for retirement purposes, say for instance, if a position was cut at a particular school and that individual was non-renewed, if they come back on whatever the first day of school, they bridge them as if they didn't leave. And that was one of the things when I said he put in
business rules, he identified what it is, and we would be glad to share the business rules that he used so that you can see.
Okay, that'd be great. And then, so can I get also the last 4 years of teacher retention?
Does he have it?
Is it in
He
here?
sent it to us.
Okay.
Based on that, that request, as far as the turnover, are you wanting turnover, the number of teachers that it left? Yeah. So and he used the same business rules from 2014-15 all the way up into the 2017-18. For 2014-15, we lost 717 teachers. For 2015-16, it was 769 teachers. For 2016-17, it was 701 teachers. And for 17-18, it was 791.
What about, I didn't see in this slide about morale. I know you guys say you're going to be working with MNEA and TEA, is that right? So that's what I'm hearing. So we have more teachers that are having major concerns because we're still losing teachers this school year too, right? You will agree.
I would agree.
Okay, thank you. So what are we doing about teacher morale and culture? That's what I am hearing. I know probably this board is getting the same thing as far as emails and just people, teachers and parents coming up to us with concerns. And what are we doing about that? That's, I'll let you answer that, then I have one more and I'm done.
If Cedar would like to come up, he's welcome to.
Yeah, so one of the things we've been incorporating is to do teacher voice sessions and getting teachers to come out and talk. I know Dr. Joseph went through that process last year as a collective. The community superintendents are working to do that within their schools. And even with the innovation schools, even today we were discussing that we'll be doing the same, doing surveys as well as focus groups with them to kind of make sure that we can make sure we're getting teacher voices to incorporate changes within the schools. And we've been talking also with our school leaders around making sure that they're doing that as well within each of the schools.
So with these voice sessions, have they been going on now or they've been going on in the past?
We last year we did it as a collective. We're trying to do a much more focused this year so we can make sure we're addressing particular school issues. And so, for example, the priority schools that we have right now, they're going to be beginning this month that process to start indicating both a survey and focus groups. That's been a part of also their work of engaging to get a part of the needs assessment to see where schools are in that process. They're working on that schedule, and then community superintendents are also working in that same space within their quadrants.
And can I make a recommendation? As far as the surveys, can the surveys come from the principals? I see that there's exit surveys that are done to be able to gather the data on teachers leaving. So can the principals not give their own surveys to their teachers? The reason why I say that, because what I want is I want a level of comfort, because that's what they're not getting is a level of comfort.
Yes, we also, we've found that teachers actually like for us to sometimes do kind of anonymous so they can provide feedback, any feedback they feel like, so they don't feel that there's a tension between them and the principal. So we usually work with the principals to decide how that looks, but we always provide a space where we can get their direct feedback. And also we use some of our panorama data where we also work to get feedback from teachers as well on what feedback they're doing in schools.
Can this be done throughout the year and not when it comes to exit interviews? I mean, what can we do to make sure that this is consistent?
Yeah, we do panorama twice. Paul, Dr. Changus?
He's nodding his head yes again.
Yeah.
I think it's twice a year, right?
We
that
do twice a year. I can give you the exact
And they're email these surveys, this panorama thing that you're talking about. I mean, how are they conducted?
Yeah, so let me, Dr. Changus, you want to give detail to that?
There are anonymous surveys that are online, and everything comes back to our office for reporting purposes. But we're talking about climate culture surveys.
And how are they given to the teachers? I mean, what's the process?
I'll have to get back to you on the exact process. There are others in my office that are more directly involved with that, but pain is taken to make sure that everything stays anonymous.
No, I get the anonymous, which is great. I want to know how often are we going to be giving teachers an opportunity to voice those concerns?
Twice a year.
How are they given? What's the process? Have they been given this process? Have they been given the process to teachers?
Yeah, the communication has gone out. The instructions have gone out. There's a survey underway right now.
Okay, so it's one underway right now. But in the past, was there one for them in the past?
There were 2 administrations last year, 2 survey administrations.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because again, this is dear to my heart when it comes to our teachers. Without teachers, we don't have schools. We want to make sure that our teachers are getting the support they need and allow them to voice their concerns, because they're in the schools, they're in those buildings, and they see every day what's going on. And if we're not paying attention and we're not listening to them, then we're going to continue to see these numbers rise. And so we have to take that responsibility to make sure that our teachers are heard, making sure that our principals are getting their support, because I know principals do want that support, but we're not listening. And we would need to listen, because I don't want to hear another teacher leave our district because of what I'm saying as far as culture, because they're leaving. And it's not fair to our students. And that's the main concern. So that was just my recommendation, and those were my questions. Thank you.
Ms. Elrod?
I have a couple questions. So regarding the exit survey, is that done in person or is that done online? Because I know some of it's done online, some of it might be done in person. So how is that?
It's an electronic survey.
Okay, that's what I assumed. And then switching gears, regarding the subfill rate, is the subfill rate also including the subfills for paras?
That's just the sub-teacher rate.
Okay. Do we have a rate for paras?
We do have the support rate, which is about 56%.
Okay. And they got a $15 support bonus, correct?
Correct.
Was that also made easier to obtain, just like it was for the $30 sub bonus for substitute teachers?
It was. However, we also flip para jobs.
Okay.
So if we cannot find a support sub to fill a para role, we flip it and turn it into a substitute teacher role. We'll flip it and turn it into a EE teacher job so that a substitute teacher can fill that job rather than a support sub. Either way, we make sure it is filled, either with a support sub or a sub teacher.
Got it. So I want to make sure I understand.
Okay.
So if a para position is not filled, then it can be switched into a sub teacher position.
Correct.
Okay.
Which means a substitute teacher can still potentially fill that role and get that $30 bonus.
Okay. Got it. But it's a 56% sub rate for paras.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I have. Good.
So I was curious if you guys collect data on middle of the academic year. How many teachers leave once the school year started till the end of the year, right? As opposed to, I know there are teachers that say this is, they give notice and they leave after the school year's over for lots of different reasons. But what's your sense for what percentage of your turnover rate happens mid-year within the academic year?
I'm not sure of the exact rate. We could look at that, but we're not seeing a lot of them that are leaving mid-year. The majority of them
leave at the end. Yeah,
at the end of the school year.
That was my hunch. Teachers don't like to leave their kids mid-year. So curious about, so we have this, and I think it's a national issue, this teacher shortage issue. Are we considering expanding our partnership with folks like TFA or other residency programs? I mean, what in terms of alternate kind of teacher programs?
So we are working with TFA, but again, it comes to a budgetary restriction on what all we can do because we have to pay that like finder's fee for them, which is $10,000
per teacher.
And so, so one of the things I really appreciate you sharing that about the national shortage of teachers, and that's important because Time Magazine, it was an article published in September.
We saw the covers.
Yeah. So, and if you take into consideration, back in 1994, it was a 1.8% disparity, and now there's an 18.7% disparity in comparable fields. That means a lot to those individuals. So in addition to working with them for culture, we also, as part of the collaborative conferencing, we're looking at compensation as well.
So I'm curious what the strategy is, and this is probably not your purview, maybe this is more CETO's purview. What happens in a school where there is no teacher assigned to that classroom day to day? If you are, here we're going into fall break, who's covering those classrooms and how are those children getting instruction?
Yeah, so currently we've implemented Ingenuity, which is an online course that we've had for students. And so that's been one strategy to kind of fill those vacancies. And so that's kind of how we've kind of worked through, and then we worked that through this sub. And the majority of the schools that we did have last year did that. This year we haven't had it for every school. The school that's had actually some of the most vacancies was in Ms. Buggs's area, that high school. So we kind of had to make sure we filled it that way. But our challenge has been to get hired teachers with the content or certification expertise. So, for example, tonight we heard about the parent that talked about pre-calculus. Well, that is one of the areas we could not find a teacher to fill. And so, but we have been successful in using some other strategies. For example, the HR department has worked with us on getting college professors to come down. We've been doing that in partnership with some schools like Tennessee State and some other professors. Another piece has been trying to work with the state on providing also alternative educational certifications. As you know, our state is one of the hardest to get reciprocity or those things, and which is a battle when you have other cities that are close, that they're in states where they can be able to do that. And so we've been also voicing our concerns, myself and Ms. Story, meeting with some folks from the state board to say, hey, we need some support around that.
That's a state board decision, that call?
That's correct.
So can we help with that?
You can.
What do you need us to do?
Make noise. But yes, but we have to kind of push the state into thinking about alternative pathways for certification. The teacher shortage issue is not just a Metro Nashville Public Schools issue. It's everywhere and everyone, especially in the urban areas, because we have so many teachers and so many vacancies in those pieces. It's a challenge. We hire about, what's our total number a year per teacher?
We hire nearly 1,000.
1,000 a year, and so as you can imagine, it's a matter of just people in buildings being certified.
Our last question. I would love. Hang on.
I could also add to that. We are growing our residency programs where we have students in the classroom as embedded teachers, and so we're doing more and more of that each year, working with the different universities as well as Ed Force. Yeah, the Belmont residency program, I think we have 18 or 23. 18 residents from Belmont.
Nashville Teacher Residency?
And Nashville Teacher Residency, we have 12 or 10? 12 there. Yeah, and TLUS with the master's program. And then when we have absenteeism, and this is what we prefer not to have to do, but with teacher absenteeism, what we will do is separate the class and have in lieu of sub, and have the students go to different classes. Yeah.
So I want to encourage you guys to also go to Hispanic serving institutions. There are universities across the country that are identified as HSIs, just like HBCUs, and so I'd like that on your
We love to
list
partner with you on that too.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Okay. That's it.
Only reason I voted for you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bugs.
So I'm sorry, I'm one of those MNPS math teachers that left the classroom. I tip my hat off to all those STEAM teachers because that math praxis is no joke, but that's neither here nor there. I just, again, thank you all. And do you know how many professors we have engaged right now in our classrooms? I cannot thank you all enough.
Just have 2 right now.
Still, I remember when that rolled out, and to be honest, I was still working at Tennessee State, and I got so many calls and emails from potential professors who thought they might want to go into the classroom. Being an urban educator is not for the faint of heart. It's not for everybody, but I mean, we do want to advocate for more teachers. So I guess maybe in a teaching and learning committee meeting, I mean, it would be good just to kind of talk with HR and hear any suggestions you all have for how we can help advocate for you, whether it's spending our time writing op-eds to make sure that we're pushing out the request to get teachers to our schools, to make sure that we are actively recruiting MNPS advocates, and then, of course, that we're always advocating for more funding from the city and the state. But we'll pull that to the appropriate committee. But thank you all for the work you're doing.
Mrs. Bush?
Okay. Just one more thing. I just don't want us to get comfortable by talking about we have a national teacher shortage. What we want to do is we want to focus on what we have here at home. We want to make sure that those are never excuses for not having great teachers and retaining great teachers. So I do want to make sure we're not getting comfortable with that. Just lost my train of thought. So I just want to make sure that one more thing. I do want to make sure that teachers and principals are feeling comfortable to talk to the administration about any concerns, any questions without any retaliation, because I really have concerns when I hear that they feel like they cannot be open or they can't have those conversations because of fear of retaliation. So I'm not saying it's happening, but I hope I don't hear it, because I want to make sure that that's one of the ways we retain. That's one of the ways we make sure that they feel comfortable. And there's other counties that are surrounded, around Davidson County that are retaining their teachers and not losing teachers like we are. Yes, we're large, and we're one of the largest urban districts, but I'm just saying. Okay, so I appreciate that.
We are a great recruiting source for those districts, so we have to love our teachers to get them to stay here. And if you do hear of retaliation, we do want to hear about it. Okay. There was something else you had mentioned about, when you said that we have not settled with the fact there is a shortage of teachers. The alternative certification program is an example of that. We will be able to certify our own employees to become teachers once that's approved. And a fantastic target would be our paraprofessionals. Many of them already have 4-year degrees. Many of them have told me that they can't afford to incur tuition to go back to school to get their certification. That certification could cost anywhere from $15,000 to $36,000. Once we get approved, it will be $5,000, and they'll be able to pay for it over time. But once they go through the program, they'll become embedded, and they'll start earning teacher pay.
One more thing, and I'm done, I promise.
Yeah.
So this board talks about helping our pre-K students, which I love that, but also want to make sure that our teachers are going to get these raises our next fiscal year because they need the raises. So we know that. So we're going to do our best in making sure that we get these teachers their raises for the next fiscal year. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
When you write that check, Deborah, apparently it's on you. Mrs. Elrod.
All right, I'm sorry, y'all are walking away, and I had my one last question.
Sorry. I got it.
Okay.
Y'all go sit down. No, I'm just kidding.
It's me.
No.
You can answer it. Okay, so with the certification process that we're going through, did we decide, or are we trying to decide if there's going to be a contract of some kind of, you're going through our process at a cheaper rate, you agree to work for us, we're such amount of time, whatever that might be. So you're not having to pay that $15,000 or $20,000. Instead, you're coming through us for 5, and for that, you're going to agree to work for us for X amount of time. Do we have that set up?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. That's something that we're looking at because we have not received that certification yet.
Sure.
So when they enter into the program based on feedback, I think it was during that new member orientation, I think you provided that feedback, and I shared it with alternative certification representative, which is Tawani Roberts. So she's like, oh, that's a great idea. So
Yeah, it should not be not an idea. There's no other environment. We talk about professionalizing our profession and having those practices that are reflective of that, and that's a very common practice in corporate America. HCA does a wonderful job of tuition reimbursement, but if they're going to support Sharon through an additional degree, they expect at least 1 to 3 years. We do the same thing with our. We have a implementation specialist program, so a new onboarding program. So when we take these fresh out of college or out of college 3 years and we start them off at a significant salary, they cannot leave our department for 1 to 3 years. They can transfer within the company, but they are committed to the department for a set number of years, and that's part of the contract and the onboarding. So it is not an anomaly. You wouldn't be being mean. You're not picking on anybody. It's protecting your investment. And so we would definitely look to see some strategies that do that. But in the vein of strategies, I want to thank you for the amount of creativity that you and your team have displayed in the recruitment and retention space. I don't know how many other districts also take the time to ask teachers' opinions twice a year, because that's a lot of data gathering and a lot of number crunching. So a lot of money. So, but I appreciate it, because that in itself, that practice is indicative that we care about our teachers and we care about their opinions and we want to hear from them. And the fact that even within this presentation, you talked about practices that were a result of what you heard in exit surveys. So thank you again for all of that work. Thank you guys so much. One of these days, I'm going to let y'all out of here before 8 o'clock, but it's all this good stuff. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. So just to wrap up the agenda, just to remind you under unfinished business, I'm giving out homework assignments now. So Mr. Sevier, if we can get a date on audit, I would appreciate it, on an audit update, so we need to put that on the agenda. All these things need to have dates by them. For the school calendar, I know we've gotten additional options and there needs to be a meeting. Dr. Sevier is working on a meeting with some other representatives within the district to come up with bring a recommendation back to the board. So that will be at the next board meeting. So that date needs to be on the agenda for next board meeting. We do have some reports that we've asked about. So we need to get a date, Dr. Coons, on the Innovation Schools high-level update. If you'd rather do that in a Teaching and Learning Committee meeting, just let Dr. Sevier know and we will schedule that. Also, Reward Schools update, which was the other end of the spectrum. We wanted to hear about the great things that schools are doing, especially those that got off of the list. I think a request was made for an MNPS next update. We need a date on this agenda for that, as well as an EL presentation, I believe, was requested. And I think as a result of today's exciting news about our ELC student programs, we wanted to talk about how do our students that have gone through our ELCs are performing in K and first grade. So again, possibly for another Teaching and Learning Committee update, just when you guys can pull that together, we'd appreciate it. So we've got a budget committee that needs to be scheduled. Mrs. Shepherd, that's on you. The Director Evaluation Committee will be on before the October 23rd board meeting. I'm not sure if it'll be at 3 or 4 o'clock, but we will get that date nailed down. Governance Committee, I'm going to pair you, Mrs. Walker, as far as the elementary suspensions piece is concerned. With your feedback from the community meetings, let Mrs. Walker know when we're ready for that. But I know we need to take a look at these policies because we've never finalized the whole review of the TBSA, the TSBA policies. Yep. So we want to do another run through of that and make sure we're all on the same page about what governance committee policies we're using. And Mrs. Elrod, I'd like to talk to you briefly after the meeting. So we're now to announcements. We'll start on my far right, Mrs. Bush. Any great news you want to share with us?
Oh, yeah. Cambridge High School, very proud of those young people over there. I had an opportunity, Mayor Bradley came out on their senior night, and he did the coin toss, which was really fun. That was the first time I've ever witnessed football players in the coin toss. I was out in the field with him, and also we had an opportunity to greet those families, those students and parents that made the court, so that was wonderful.
Homecoming?
Yeah.
Oh.
All right. So on the pre-K note, I am very proud that Cole Elementary is doing a really good job at doing a pre-K parent and guardian workshop. They have a series of 8. Their first one that they just had over 20 parents and guardians that attended, so that's really good attendance for that. Additionally, tonight is John Overton's Lady Bobcats Soccer District Tournament against their main rivals, Cambridge. And then also the Bobcat Players, which is at John Overton as well, just closed their performance of Acts of Murder, and they had a really good turnout for that. It was a short performance of only about 4 days, but very proud of that.
I have a few announcements myself. Tomorrow night will be the first of MNPS roundtable discussions on education facilitated by Councilman Steve Glover, who is the chair of the Metro Council Education Committee. And so he's looking for parents. He's going to hold one in every district. The first one just happens to be tomorrow night at McGavock High School, coming in the north entrance, which is the McGavock Pike side for those of us that are directionally challenged. And it will be at 6 o'clock. And we invite all parents, teachers to come out and express what your concerns are. Also, Thursday morning is the McGavock High School Professional Skills Fair for the Freshman Academy. I'll be there at 7:30 in the morning until 10:30, and I'll be doing the 3-minute elevator speech again. That's my favorite part, so I'll be doing that as well. And then this coming Saturday is the Music City Invitational, again at McGavock High School. Prelims will have 15 bands and begin at 11:15 and end at approximately 4 o'clock. We'll be presenting prelim awards, and I'll be there for that as well. And finals begin for 6 o'clock, and so I invite anyone to come out and view. It's always a great contest. A little prejudiced, but thank you.
I did not mention all of my reward schools at the last meeting, so a very warm special shout out to Cameron, Head, Hume Fogg, Kip, Lockland, MLK, Meggs, and Schwab for being named reward schools. And thank you so much, and special shout out to these schools that rolled off the priority list: Inglewood, Napier, Kirkpatrick, and Pearl Cone. So thank you all to those community members, students, teachers, administrators, everyone that had a hand in that. I will be attending the Warner Elementary School Cultural Night on Thursday after I first attend the MNEA and NOAA hosted Elementary School Suspension, Arrests, and Expulsions Feedback Evening. So for anyone that claims to really want to hear what teachers think, please come out on Thursday. Thank you so much to those school board members that have come or are planning to come. But Thursday evening at MNEA headquarters at 5:00 p.m., we will be just gathering feedback. It's a community conversation. Please don't feel any pressure at all. We want to have any suggestions that you have. We want to get your input so that when we really do finally pass this policy, that we can really, really support our teachers that we love, that we claim to love. We can really support those teachers, support those schools, and have, really keep their best interest at heart. Also, Inglewood Elementary School had a family STEAM night last week. We had all kinds of performances from students. There was a lot of parental engagement, literally hundreds of families there. I really want to remind everyone of different partner meetings happening around the district. If your school is a Community Achieve school or even a Communities in Schools school, there are often monthly or quarterly partner meetings that we would love you to plug into. That's a good way for you to find out what volunteer opportunities are present at that school or in that cluster. East High School and Dr. Kovac, thank you so much for hosting us. There were questions around their budget and why they had to lose a counselor, and it was just good to hear parents and students, they're advocating for themselves. I want us to continue those conversations, making sure that students really, really understand how they can advocate for themselves in the long run. To Ms. Shepard's point, on October 17th, District 5 will have our meeting with Councilmember Glover. It will be hosted at 6:00 p.m. at either Stratford or Pearl Cone High School. I'll let you all know when that does happen. And lastly, tomorrow, In less than 11 hours, my 6-month-old and I will join Mayor Briley and Dr. Sean Joseph as we walk to school at Stratford High School and at Inglewood. So just say a prayer for us because that is so early. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
I'll be doing walk to school at West End, Love Circle to West End. So I'll be going downhill. That's a good thing. At 7:30.
You got to get back to your car.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, you gotta come back.
So I'm excited to say that Aiken Elementary has joined the Project Lit family, and they hosted their first Project Lit meeting with students and parents and partners. They're going to do those quarterly. Super excited about that. West End and JT Moore playing football this week, and there's a fall fest. And JT Moore Carnival on Saturday. Okay.
Okay, thank you all for those. I just want to share two things, and both of them are totally out of character, so I apologize for that. The first one is I want to remind everybody that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, which is something that surprisingly at less than 50 years old became something very near and dear to my heart last year. So I'm sitting here as a breast cancer survivor, letting you know that getting your mammograms are important. Make sure if you haven't done it, take somebody. If you've already had yours, please make sure that you do that. Also, a comment was made earlier, a couple of comments were made earlier, and I caution being responsive, but I've been channeling a lot of Ms. Bugs today about making sure correct messaging gets out. And so I'll say this again in a committee meeting, but I want to point out one thing in particular, that in 2014, the number of schools on the priority list actually tripled. So what we saw this year with the number of priority schools, number one, it's not the most priority schools, or the rate of increase is not the greatest that we've ever seen. And again, this is not an excuse. It's about perspective. And as we mentioned in the press conference that I think Mrs. Walker was able to attend, the press conference when announcing the priority schools, is that there are other districts in Tennessee that have made some choices so that they're not in the bottom 5%. And that has included closing a significant number of their schools. So it's a numbers game, guys. It's a numbers game. Do we have work to do? Absolutely. Are there students that we are not serving the way we should? Absolutely. Are there needs out there that are still unmet? Absolutely. But the other part I will add to that is that those needs don't all start or end in the classroom. And so when we talk about advocating and supporting for what's needed in Metro Public Schools, it's for every service in this city to wrap its arms around the least of these. Which brings me to my final point. I don't ever want anyone in this room to ever interchange or confuse the words diversity with inclusion. You don't have to work to create diversity. We have one of the most diverse cities and one of the most diverse school districts in the country. You work at creating inclusion. And creating inclusion begins with addressing equity. And addressing equity is usually where the fight begins. Thank you all for being here tonight, spending your evening with us. I'll do better, I'm trying, but being there no further business. Mrs. Walker, you're at the end.
Oh, this meeting is adjourned.
Yes.
I'm learning. Okay,
Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.